Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Saturday Smackdown. Me and Zuta coming to you again with some more Age of Empires 3 action, and honestly, there could not be a more appropriate word for this series, that being, of course, action. Jam-packed full of it today, a very close series of actually quite lengthy games, as you can see by the size of this video. Definitely one to watch if you haven't sat through a whole Smackdown in a while, and normally I'd mention one particular game to take a look at for those of you that might not have time to watch the entire series, but today, all of the games, honestly all of them, were really quite good. So if there were a time to watch an entire Smackdown, this would be the one Zuta and I would like to show you. Thoroughly enjoyed casting this one. Hats off to Kaiserklein and Phillnick. They are our competitors for today, producing some very entertaining top-level Age of Empires 3. It's not often you get to see a 3-hour Smackdown, so very pleased with today's videos, and thanks to them for playing. As always, though, feel free to skip to any of the Civilization matchups played today using the timestamps in the description below, though do be careful, as looking at those can ruin the outcome of the entire series if you plan to watch all of the games in order. So there is that. And before we begin the first match, obviously I've been absent from the channel for about 2 weeks now, so if you want updates on why that's the case, or on Zuta's barking dog problem, the neighbor's noisy dog that we joked about last stream, do keep listening, as the next 9 minutes or so is us two catching up whilst we wait for the first game to start. Actually, also some news about Strong World. Before I forget, as a lot of you will know who keep up with ESO-community.net, there is another ESOC event going on. The most recent one is Strong World. It's a sort of World Cup style team game league with lots of people playing, representing their real world countries as a team with other people from that country. So lots going on, lots of commentary to check out. So I decided to leave all of this in at the start. Normally I'd edit out the downtime between the games, but I thought all of this discussion might be quite interesting to some of you. But if not, feel free to skip it, and you can click on the annotation on screen to do that right now. But without further ado, game number 5, I can't not give a recommendation. Game number 5 was the longest game in this series, and for a very good reason. Do check that one out if nothing else. And as I said, this entire series was completely top tier. So, without further ado, enjoy the video.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's that time of the week. We are over on Game Ranger, ready for Saturday Smackdown. Interjection is here with me. He's been gone for a couple of weeks. He's been sick and then hosting a tournament for another game, but he's back in action today, and unfortunately, wouldn't you know it, servers down. ESO has decided that, nope, it's not going to work. But we're going to try and get a little bit of Saturday Smackdown action going in on Game Ranger. Kaiserklein and Mongo 10, I believe, are the players that we're going to have slated to play against each other. If you're looking at the chat, you can see that Kaiser has posted, "I got to go to toilet first, gonna take some time." Apparently that's what Mongo said about 5 minutes, or 10 minutes ago, I guess now. Apparently he had chili for lunch. Hopefully everything is alright with his situation in the restroom.
I got the horrible image now. Bringing a new meaning to the Ring of Fire. That sounds awful.
Yes, indeed. For those of you who weren't here last week, I was solo casting last week, and I did a couple games from Strong World for Smackdown last week. We had 3 games, 2v2s, kind of interesting games. I'll post those ones up on my YouTube after this. Team Switzerland versus Team Poland.
I love how they've made it a country thing. I think that's so much more compelling than a clan thing. It's actually good.
Yeah, it makes like you get a little bit of national pride on the line.
Yeah, it gives it gives everyone like a team to root for. Yeah. So even if you're not in a clan, you can just you can sort of hope somebody wins, and then when you have like somebody in mind that you want to win, suddenly the whole game is so much more interesting just because you have someone you're invested in or some team you're invested in. Yeah. But Zuta, last time we did this, I believe you had your neighbor, their dog, was being rather loud, and I would like to be updated on this situation. Did you or did you not write a letter, or did you go and talk to him, or what happened? Tell me about it.
So this is the update on the dog situation. So after Smackdown of two or 3 weeks ago, whatever the last time was that you were here, and the dog was barking mad. Oh my dog, mad. I sent an email, a rather disgruntled email to the landlord, to like the manager of the property that I live at, and said like, there's this guy, he's got this dog, it's been barking for 16 weeks straight. Can you please tell him to make it be quiet? Like, I've gone over there, knocked on his door, but he doesn't seem to be home during like the same times that I am. Plus, I'm not exactly sure that. I went over there and knocked on his door on stream, but I'm not exactly. I'm pretty happy actually he wasn't there, because I don't know if I would have had like the guts to, cuss him out and tell him to like take his dog and make it be quiet or whatever. So I wrote a letter, or I wrote an email. They said, okay, we'll talk to him. We understand like nobody wants to have a barking dog like being that loud or whatever. And that was the end of it. Now, to be fair, that dog hasn't barked overly loud for the past 2 weeks. There was one instance, I think it was like a week ago Wednesday, where it was like 7 o'clock at night and that dog was woofing up a storm again. But ever since then, it's been pretty good. So we'll see if that trend continues.
Yeah.
It's definitely improved. And I hope that it continues to stay like that.
And hopefully the dog's happier as well. I don't know how they fixed that or what he did, but I don't know. I wish somehow some part of me wishes he'd opened the door and you'd cussed him out, because I would have had the recording and it would have been perfect. It would have been such a great video to just have on YouTube that was non-Age of Empires related. But yeah.
Yeah, but I'm like I said, I'm glad I didn't have to actually go over there and like say anything, because. Like, you don't want to make enemies with your neighbors, even though I don't like really know the guy or ever talk to him or anything. Like, you don't, just like one fewer people in the world who hates you. So
yeah.
And for all like he knows, right? Like I'm sure like the landlord talked to him and said like, hey, we've had some complaints about you having a loud dog. Like, can you make it be quiet or whatever, right? But for all he knows, like, it could have been anyone. So.
All right, well, something else I wanted to talk to you about. I mentioned a podcast a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this would be very different from the Revolt podcast, which I believe is more Age of Empires 3 focused, though does have, non-Age of Empires 3 related stuff. This would be just a Zuterjection podcast, and I imagine the first episode would have some Age of Empires 3 stuff in it, where we talk about, why we played it in the first place, how we got to what we're doing, why we're doing it. But I imagine that podcast would just be me and Zuta talking about whatever we found interesting happening either in the real world or online, or whatever we wanted to talk about. And ideally we'd make notes during the week, and maybe we'd do it every 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whenever we wanted to do it. But that would be maybe an hour, 2 hours long. And you said you might be interested in doing that?
Yeah, I'd be interested in doing it.
Yeah,
it'd be kind of fun.
I'd like to gauge from the chat if people would be interested in something like that. It'd obviously be on my YouTube channel. We'd do it offline. It wouldn't be a stream thing. And then what I'd do is edit it afterwards. I'd cut out all of the downtime, maybe if there was moments where we didn't have anything to say, or maybe I go off on a rant and start talking about something completely unrelated and completely uninteresting. Then I can, what I can do is present like a really polished piece of discussion where we get rid of all the ums and ahs, and it just sounds much nicer. And
more polished. Yeah, it'd be pretty fun. I'd like it. But I think we are ready. Launching into the game. We are going to be playing on ESO patch. In the most recent update to the EP, Buckethead put in like that little option to like basically have the ability to like set up your thing for Game Ranger. So that's kind of neat. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention this on stream either. You'll probably notice that I am back to my new PC, and as a result, hopefully. I'm super hopeful that there will be no crashes. All issues have been resolved. I sent it back to the manufacturer, told them what the deal was. They paid for the shipping and everything, fixed it, sent it back, said we swapped out a bunch of parts, QA'd it. It looks like it should be good to go now. So I'm super hopeful that all of those issues have been resolved, and I should be back to like being able to use my new PC like I was previously. So I'm super excited about that, and hopefully we have no issues as a result.
What should the next tips and tricks video be about, Zuta?
What have you all done? So there's 10 of them, right? Or is there 11? There's 10 or 11.
10, I think. I think the next one I said was going to be about how terrible the town center bell function was, because it went quite nicely with the teleporting villager one.
Yeah.
But I didn't do it yet.
Do you think there's ever like any value in doing something along the lines of like explaining to people like basic card orders? Like you have no idea how many people just like don't send 3 villagers as their first card under PR10, or don't send 700 wood like with basically every civilization.
Like that is something I wanted to do, but I was going to address that in the form of a civilization guide. But I don't think I'll ever do well, I might do, but tips and tricks are like something I can produce quite quickly, like within 8 hours. Like that's how long those videos can take, because all of the explanation is scripted and is between like is up to about 1,000 words. So I script it all out. I spend a long time wording it, making sure it's very easy for somebody who perhaps their native language isn't English, because I'm aware that a large portion of my audience is not from Britain or the US or Australia. So yeah, but a guide I would do the same, and that would take a huge amount of time to get right, and it would be like a very long video as well. I'm thinking like 15 minutes rather than 3.
Don't forget the Canadians; they speak English too for the most part.
That's true. Yeah, but when I say the US, like I don't know, like I don't like admitting it, but I do kind of forget about Canada and count them as the US. Sorry, Canadians.
They're our hat. They're the little hat.
Yeah. And then when I record the audio for those, like the amount of takes I do to like get the audio well, like recorded nicely is huge. And then the actual editing, like all of the things you see on screen, the one for the trading posts, that was an enormous amount of like fiddling around getting the fucking arrows to appear at the right time.
Yeah, like the arrows and the like little boxes and the zoom ins and the pans and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that video I didn't even like very much, because there was like something about Minutemen pop that I like just completely butchered, and like I couldn't spend time fixing it because, well, I could have done, but when the video takes more than 10 hours to produce, which that one did, I'm sort of thinking to myself, well, I'm supposed to be doing this on a regular scale, and if it's taking more than a day, then it's just not sustainable, so I'm just not going to spend more than a day on it. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Saturday Smackdown. I have returned from a 2-week break. The first week I was away hosting a tournament. I was asked to host a 4-day tournament, and on one of those days, it was a Saturday that it fell on, so I wasn't able to do Smackdown. And then the second week I missed, I was actually very sick. We won't go into that. But I've returned. Zuta has been doing them on his lonesome, I believe, and all of those VODs will be available on his YouTube channel. Either way, I'll put the YouTube channel of ZutaZuta in the description. Do go subscribe to him. I'm sure there's some Strong World stuff going up on that, which we might have mentioned earlier in this stream or in this VOD. But, ladies and gentlemen, the game has begun. My name is Interjection, obviously, and here we have Kaiserklein in the south of the map in the colour blue, playing as indeed the Germans. I haven't casted AOE 3 for a while. I'm excited for this, especially seeing a German versus Russia. This matchup is not one you see it particularly often, I would say, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and the reason why it's not, and I'm glad you bring that up, is because I think most people consider this to be a fairly one-sided matchup for Germany, honestly. So hats off to Phillnick for picking, I think, what most people would consider a fairly difficult matchup for the Russian player here in the first game.
Yeah, just want to point out the teleporting vills just there. Did you see it? I made a video on that, obviously. But yeah, this matchup, Germany definitely one of the strongest civs, and Russia, I think, not getting a lot of love recently. People are not too fond of it for being a strong civ, and obviously we know why. But here is Phillnick in the north of the map in the colour yellow, playing, of course, as the Russians. About to pick himself up a 70 coin treasure. I wonder if that's worthwhile. Obviously 70 coin going to be very nice, but perhaps there's something nearby. Let's take a look. Control Shift F. The nearest treasure to him is a settler treasure right over there. What do you think about this?
Where do you see the settler treasure?
Right over here. Oh, the flare. Obviously, you want to grab the 70 coin ASAP, right? You don't want your opponent to get that. It's a nice, easy pickup, and obviously it's a great one to get. But do you think it's worth scouting the perimeter of your base before you select the treasure, or do you think you should just go for a very small treasure that is very easy to get right away?
70 coin like that, especially on this map, right? Coyotes are the weaker, younger brothers of the wolves, which take considerably longer. I mean, we've all heard high-level players talk about how important wood and food treasures are early in the game. Obviously, this treasure of the settler going to be very good as well.
Yep.
And to some degree, personally, I like to at least have a feel for what resources I do have around my map before I begin doing too much treasure scouting, but I don't think there's any harm in taking that little coyote treasure. Only 2 coyotes. They're going to fall down pretty quick. He's going to be able to get it.
Yeah, beautifully creeped as well. This was really, really nicely done. I'm really just, well, not impressed, but just it looks so smooth, and it's just nice to see him creep it in this way. And he's going to pick up the settler treasure as a result of finding it, and the 70 coin as well. So really, the discussion rather redundant, as he does manage to get both. But perhaps, his opponent did find that native scout. Perhaps maybe getting the 70 coin. Maybe, slowing down could have been relevant. But in this case, 80 wood going to be picked up by Kaiserklein, and both explorers sort of on the other side of the map there. Settler treasure is going to be picked up, and I imagine that will start herding these pronghorn that are very nearby back towards his base, or no, he's going to head back as well. That's okay as well.
Yeah, against Germany especially, right? That's an important thing to remember. No matter what Germany is going to do, they're always going to have 2 Uhlans. We saw the native scout run past this, and because this tree stays up, he's going to know that that's where the villager was. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be too surprised to see the 2 Uhlans just head over there, especially had the native scout seen that villager stopping and hurting those pronghorn, right? Then it's an easy target, a very easy target.
Ooh, is he going to get snared? He is. The native scout has found the explorer, and now he's going to have to creep backwards. He's going to have to walk back a bit and then try and get some shots in, but not doing... that's exactly what he needs to do. He needs to be able to keep doing that and maybe threaten that native scout away, but hasn't been able to get too many shots off. There's another one, does manage to do it correctly there, but he's going to have to walk back towards his base, and I believe there's a lot of controversy surrounding the scout and his ability to do this, but can he get the shot in? No, he's getting punished by this scout.
Yeah, and it's going to probably result in him losing his scout. And there is some controversy over native scouts. I actually I'm not too bothered by it. I mean, we can see Phillnick still got away. He actually did a pretty good job. I think what a lot of people would do, and a lot of the people who complain would do, is they would just book it, hightail it back to their base,
and not try to shoot it.
Not try and shoot it, not try and trade against it whatsoever. He is still going to lose his scout here, but it's going to die in a good spot. He got most of the health from that native scout as well, so yeah, it's a little bit annoying, but you have to remember, I mean, he got like a villager treasure early in the game as well, so it's kind of a give and take with the treasures.
Yeah. Notably, that scout, the blue scout, is now heading back well over here to construct a trading post, so even though that, the scout followed him all the way back, yellow doesn't know this, but certainly blue is going to be delayed in getting the trading post up, and that is kind of relevant. And I do, yellow did not put his villagers in the town centre there. Phillnick chose not to put villagers in the town centre to shoot the blue explorer, and of course that'd be because blue, very high hit points there, probably wouldn't be worthwhile, and you don't really want to be pulling your villagers off wood, especially these trees, because if we go back to Zuta 101 box theorem, we know that, perhaps if it was these hunts where the villagers are currently, that would have been much nicer, but since they're on the trees, you really don't want to be walking around too much. But that is the end of that. So that's, small sort of Discovery Age things. I think it's important to focus on that. But both players now up to the Colonial Age. There is 400 wood coming down from both players there, as we can see. But very, aside from what we just saw and all of the treasures we talked about, very normal things coming out from both players. Germany, starting with a market, does send 2 settler wagons. Obviously, you'd be sending that, nothing out of the ordinary there, and distributivism coming out from Russia as well. Is he going to shoot these bison away? No, that is... Almost did it, though, I imagine. Perhaps he was completely aware of it, I'm not sure, but that villager was shooting the bison away from his base. Anyway, both players up to the Colonial Age, 400 wood. Blockhouse does come down, ZutaZuta, with a scout very nearby. Going to see everything.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, I want to point out the positioning of this blockhouse as well, because it's on Russia to determine the pacing of this game, and we can see Phillnick has decided that the pace of this game is going to be very slow, and it's even more transparent with his card selection, sending Spice Trade as his first card here in the Colonial Age, and as a result, he's not going to be able to punish Kaiser Chiefs overly hard early in the game, and well, Kaiser's doing kind of his patented saloon shenanigans. We can see Palatine Settlements has come out. He's got the saloon up. What units is he training? Units in queue. What has he got? He's got some Renegados in queue.
Units in queue. Yes, he does. They are the...
What are those ones called? Comancheros?
Comancheros, I believe. Yeah, they're, well, whatever they are. They're sort of the Dragoon-style unit. They're quite expensive, but they do have Dragoon-style stats. Here comes some, the Uhlans up to the coin mine villagers. Nicely done there. Yellow pulling them off towards the blockhouse there. And I saw these calves sort of looming around. They were going to come in towards the blockhouse, but since this native scout was nearby and saw the muskets, those calves did not actually take that route and instead went in a different location. The muskets coming back there, of course, to fight the cavalry away, scare them away. And here these villagers getting these bison closer towards the town centre. Here comes the Uhlans Uhlans. Are they going to try and get a kill? But Cossacks do arrive from the town center. And those Uhlans, 2 Uhlans definitely making the yellow player work. Actually is going to get caught there. Yellow going to be pretty happy about finding those 2 Uhlans. Is he going to get that last one away? I don't think so. It's snared and does most likely take. But here we do have Comancheros coming in. Of course, they do have ×3 versus these cavalry, and they're quite far away from home now. Can he use the speed? He did walk back there a little. He wants to get towards this, get as many shots in as he can before they get closer to the town center. Here comes some muskets, going to sort of flank on the other side. Actually going to shoot these cavalry there. And I think...
Yeah, this is actually pretty good for Kaiser. Like he's actually doing a pretty good job of keeping his Comancheros at pretty high HP. And I mean, we've always kind of pointed out how well Dragoon-style units do in the Age 2 versus Age 3 discrepancy. Kaiser obviously still staying in Age 2, but having the Dragoon-type unit running around this must-cost composition quite nicely. And should he be able to age behind this, which I assume is his end goal, we can see he's got tons of coin. Really needs to get some food going in order to truly age, but has that saloon up, and he'll have a decent composition against this as long as Russia doesn't get a strong timing push.
It's going to just fire away. These 2 Cossacks not really going to do any damage. One of them does die, and then this yellow one gets behind. But yes, is stacking up the resources for an age. All of the coin is available for the age up now, and you know, he would be collecting coin because of course Comancheros cost nothing but coin. In fact, all mercenaries cost nothing but coin. But certainly the coin is available, and I do wonder if he'll send something like the food shipment or something like that. Possibly not. But either way, all of his villages, almost all of them at least, now gathering food, and that could absolutely be something he wants to do, get up to the next stage here. Russia, though, on the other hand, this villager, is it going to get caught? They can take a lot of fire from Comancheros. They have 0.5 multipliers, so...
Yeah. I just actually noticed that myself, the negative multiplier against villagers. They're actually quite poor at raiding. He did pick up 2 villagers total with his aggressive plays there, which is going to, you know, somewhat justify the creation of this many of these weaker outlaw type units. But at the same time, like you mentioned, all the villagers swinging off of coin, going over to food, no doubt has steel traps at this point in the game, and as a result is going to be able to gather up the food required to age very, very quickly, sending 700 wood so that he can get a couple more trading posts out. Maybe get a barracks or a stable if that's his prerogative here early in the game, or maybe he'll just continue to plop down houses, make use of that Valentine settlements, and get even more.
Does take out another villager, nicely done. So, you know, as you're mentioning, yes, steel traps, gathering all the food, and definitely getting very, very efficient use of the villagers because, of course, steel traps, excellent, and food gathering is very good anyway. And 700 would definitely the better shipment. You know, you pointed that out. It's going to be very useful for trading posts. And he's able to get up the trading route line behind this. Whilst his opponent's sort of stuck in his base here, creating units, trying to defend off these raids. And I think Blue doing a good job of bringing the Comancheros in into these different places wherever he can to get some shots. Strelets do manage to head off these units, and of course Strelay do have multipliers against this style units. 2 Comancheros going down there. Not the positioning Blue wanted, but Kaiserklein now up to the Fortress Age, and I imagine, oh, look at all of this on coin. I'm very interested to see what the units in queue are. Let's take a look. Highlanders are being trained from, of course, the saloon there. This is actually rather exciting.
He could go Highlander Ulan, like vet Ulan. Like, imagine how good Highlander with the 9 Ulan, 8 Ulan shipments is going to be.
Yeah, or even perhaps one of the mercenary shipments that are available to Germany. He does have 10 Landsgenets and 8 Finnish Hackpel, along with improved mercenaries in his deck. And I do wonder if he's going to be able to, because Highlanders, which are musketeer-style units, do train very, very slowly. You can only make one saloon, and I do wonder if he's going to be able to spend all of this coin. He's stacking up a lot of it, certainly. These musket-style units cost 200 coin each. Mine does run out there. He's absolutely tearing through these mines. But what I'm saying, the point I'm getting to is, do you think he's able to spend all the coin solely at the saloon, or do you think he'll have to spend like a mercenary shipment or something like that?
I think he's going to eventually have too much coin to be able to spend it all at the saloon. Improved mercenaries has come in, so
okay.
He's got stronger.
Really investing in this line.
Yeah.
Look at those Highlander stats. Holy crap! 500 HP, 75 ranged attack with musketeer style multipliers. Actually ridiculous. Now that the blue player's up to the next stage, right? Yellow has to do something.
Yeah, I mean, he has to push in, and it has to be good now. I mean, we can tell Phillnick is absolutely not ready to any sort of, I don't think he's aging. He's not aging, so these fights need to go well for him. With this improved mercenaries, this number of Highlanders, the remaining coming Shadows, going to be a tall task here.
Yeah, he almost managed to get all the villagers down there. The blockhouse does manage to go up. Yeah, Comanchiera is falling down, and these muskets are very strong. But there's a lot of yellow units there. I'm not actually certain what would win that fight. I think yellow might have the slight edge, but really these muskets are so damn strong. Like,
muskets with like one attack move volley.
I'm actually really curious as to what would win that fight. I think yellow would, but with reinforcements arriving soon for the blue player, yeah, another batch, and each batch of units adds so much power to blue's army. It's very different from, say, a batch of units arriving for yellow, obviously. And yeah, at this point in the game, hold on, yellow. Take a look at where blue's gathering his coin, and that's obviously how invested he is in. Oh my goodness, both of these mines almost half out already, and it's not like he's even been there for that long.
That was going to be my next comment as well. Is that I mean, if you take a look at where he's gathering coin in these two locations, where's the next step? Like these patches of villagers, they're going to have to traverse to these two coin mines, right? And that is going to be very, very often. So if Phillnick can keep up this pressure, he doesn't even have to be successful in winning all the fights. He just has to keep Kaiser locked in his base, and then find the resources to train like 5 Cossacks and start starting out these coin mines. Because Phillnick knows just as well as I do that if you train this many mercenaries, and only mercenaries, that you're gathering a ton of points.
These muskets get absolutely battered. They're just dropping like flies. That's actually awful for him. That fight is definitely not something he wants to hang around in and take any more losses at. These muskets, these Highlanders are just going to tear down. Look at that, just tearing down the blockhouse. Just going to knock it down instantly. I imagine he could just take one Highlander and just finish that off real quick. 45 HP.
Yeah. This has been an impressive display of Kaiser Chief's mercenary play, and I've watched him stream, and he does this on the regular. I mean, it's not like it's any big secret that Kaiserklein loves to use mercenaries, and he's proven here that it's actually like legitimately viable. Phillnick's a pretty good player. And
the micro here is surely going to be try and make one unit like never try and take two shots on the same unit. Always like each different unit should be attacking a different unit. That's the kind of micro you should be going for with units that have so much attack. Oh my god! Oh, Strelix to the counter and they just got shat on.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, wow. I mean, that's it, right? Like, there's
the Finnish hackapels for the finish. Wow, for the finish? Oh, that's quite funny. Then their Finnish hackapels. But these, not traditionally very strong, certainly have 145 hand attack. That is partly due to the improved mercenary shipment. But these don't have...
Card. It's like 25% or something.
It's actually a really, really efficient card. It's way more efficient than perhaps an ordinary sort of unit improvement. But these units not traditionally very strong, but in this case, oh my goodness, look at this! They're going to absolutely
they're going to destroy these villagers. Yeah. But importantly, over here, the game's still not over. Like Phillnick is doing what he needs to do. Remember, Kaiser's completely invested in the strength of his mercenaries. With improved mercenaries, sent Royal Mint as a card as well, so he's completely all in on this gather only coin, make only mercenary strategy. And if Phillnick can kill a bunch of these villagers and slowly whittle away at the mercenary count, look at Kaiser's base. It's not like he's got a ton of infrastructure to support any other sort of transition, right? I mean, he's got the saloon and a couple of houses made from Palatine settlements, and that's about it. And
here we go, look at this, we've got more raids incoming there. And it's very, very predictable where blue's going to be, right? It's just at the coin mines, that's the only place he's going to be, and the coin mines are dwindling out very, very quickly. Yeah, there's nothing on this side of the map to really protect them, and Highlanders aren't a particularly fast-moving unit. They're not going to be able to get anywhere very quickly to defend it. Fortunately, he does have the hackapels, and they are much more faster moving. But, as I mentioned, they're not particularly good for their cost. Though certainly much better due to the shipment that he sent. But traditionally, very low hit points for a unit. He just needs to start attacking. This is not how good hackapels need to be fighting. They really, really do here. But I think hackapels more than capable of taking out these Cossacks here.
Yeah. The hackapels combined with the villager HP and the tankiness that they provide are going to be able to help take up these
fights are just resolved so quickly with these units. Just
it's It's ridiculous how dirty those units are. But take a look at the economic. Well, I was going to say take a look at the economic unit population. Kaiser has fallen down quite a bit recently, but it looks like Phillnick has done quite a bit of damage himself.
Yeah.
So,
Minute called as well along with a couple of Strele there, but no match for Highlanders. And I would actually like him to see, now that he has managed to get the blockhouse down to 80 HP, just finish it off before a batch of sort of more Strele can arrive. Or maybe now that the hacker, or yeah, see, Strele do just come out just there. But either way, there's so many units in this area, and Yellow does resign. Blue has far too many units in his base, and the next thing coming up, the destruction of the houses, the stable. Where are these villages here going to work? Certainly not on this coin mine, and Blue does have the power level in this base here just to finish the game out. GG.
Yeah, and I actually I actually find it super entertaining to watch Kaiser make these mercenary builds work, because he does it quite frequently in quick search on his Smurf account, but proving that, I mean, Phillnick's a pretty good player. Phillnick's like a PR 35 plus player, and sure, you know, we mentioned maybe the matchup not the most in favor of Russia, but still a well-executed build by Kaiser. Did what he needed to do. Even the Comancheros early in the game, they ran around, they provided some harass. He killed several villagers with them, Dragoon-type units, because they're fast, because they have some range, and because, you know, they do a decent job of killing Cossacks, and that's the unit that realistically Phillnick is relying on defending the raids. You know, in traditional Ulan raids, he's going to use his, you know, his 9 Cossacks from the early game to try and mitigate that. But the Comanchero is kind of shutting that down, and we can see, look at the villager count. Phillnick, you know, losing 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe villagers before Kaiser even got aged up, and that was just due to those Comancheros. And you know, sure, once things got going a little bit. Those Hackapels got out on the map. The Cossack count started to grow a little bit more. Villagers started dropping off the map left and right. But when the dust settled,
go ahead.
Yeah, when the dust settled, Kaiser Chiefs was pretty far ahead.
Yeah, I do wonder what would happen. I mean, let's take a look at some of the comments there. Thought my cost would do all right, and I think it is very difficult to predict how well you will do in fights with mercenaries. Something high-level players are good at is judging a fight and going, will I win this? Won't I win this? How far much will I win this? And just knowing the outcome of the fight, depending on, you know, how each player will micro, they can sort of predict the outcome. But when it comes to units you're not familiar with, such as Highlanders and Hackapel, which you don't really deal with very often in games, might be much more difficult and to predict a fight. And I think Phillnick perhaps committed to a fight that he thought he'd be alright in, but clearly it was not, and that had, you know, huge implications on the rest of the game. I do like to wonder, you know, you mentioned that Blue was very, very invested in this strategy. Look at that, you know, we've got the mercenary improvement there, along with the Royal Mint coming on really early, and then the early blacksmith, was it Advanced Arsenal rather? What am I even talking about? So invested, and you know, these coin mines are dwindling very, very quickly. If Yellow was able to, you know, stay in the game a bit longer and was perhaps able to play more competitively for the coin mines, maybe, you know, control them a bit better and stay in the game for longer. Once all these coin mines run out, what does Blue even do then?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, certainly if he can get to that point, right, where if he can outlast the German player in natural resources, he will win, assuming that, you know, Kaiser doesn't just have an unkillable army like he does right now. But and that's what I was mentioning, that it would have been really nice to see a little bit more aggression on those coin mines earlier in the game. Had he gotten onto those coin mines a little bit earlier, even if he can just spare 5 Cossacks to go and check those coin mines while continuing the pressure up in Kaiser's base, Kaiser has to start making very difficult decisions of where do I allocate units to defend these coin mines? How do I continue to gather coin to support this Highlander, Hackapel, mercenary shenanigans that I'm well committed to? And I think it would have been perhaps a little bit more difficult for him at that point.
Yeah, but either way, you know, that's the build he wanted to do, and maybe it was the novelty of doing it was the reason he did it, as opposed to it being the best build out there. But definitely very entertaining, and clearly can be strong, especially against Russia, as shown to us just now. But that is the end of game number 1. I believe game number 2 is about to start, and we'll see you in just a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to game number 2 in this best of 7 series between Kaiserklein and Phillnick. We're back on Game Ranger. Thankfully it's working. I've been up and down a lot recently, especially on the weekends. I think for a few Smackdowns in a row it's not been working. Microsoft has upgraded the servers to new hardware, but in reality land, that just makes... I don't know what they're doing. I really have no idea why it's not working. Apparently we've received an upgrade, and apparently things are supposed to be going more smoothly, but that certainly has not been the outcome. But we are on ESO for the time being. To continue this best of 7 that me and Zuta are bringing to you, here we have Phillnick in the left-hand side of the map in the colour yellow, playing as indeed the Dutch. Spawning in on... Oh god, I know this map. It's always this one I never remember the name of.
It's a small state.
Is this Arkansas?
Fairly impoverished. Yeah.
It is. Hey. I did it. We did it, Reddit. Alright.
I was going to start just describing, like, obscure facts of Arkansas, like, that only likely Americans would know.
Yeah, I was wondering, why is he giving me this? This is of no use to me.
Like, the most populated city in this state is... I'd have to Google it because I don't actually know. It's probably Little Rock would be, I guess.
Well, even Zua doesn't know. But 40 XP going to be picked up by Phillnick real quick there. Just going to quickly grab that, and that will mean he can get that population. I see that. Sorry, that settlers shipment on the way a little bit sooner. It's interesting to look at the XP graph, right? Dutch is slightly ahead, and I think that is sort of significant. 3 villages will gather maybe I do wonder how much extra resources that would result in. Maybe something like 50, maybe less than that, I'm not sure. But still, XP treasure, certainly better at that point in the game, that small little one, than it is at any other point in the game, I suppose. But his opponent, we do have, blue, here he is, Kaiserklein, Kaiserclown, Kaiser Chiefs, Kaiserklein. I believe I'm quoted on the ESOP forums for saying that, so I'm going to make a big deal out of it.
Some guy's signature is that.
Yeah.
And, it's still one of my favorite signatures on that whole website.
Yeah, I think so too. But Kaiserklein is going to be grabbing himself the hunting dogs upgrade there, and not going to be going with the trading post early on. Do you want to talk to us about the implications of this? Does he have something else in mind? He did just show us a mercenary build. What's this guy up to?
I missed the start. What was the wood crate start? You're so good at remembering those. It must have just been a single wood crate, right?
If he's building a market, that would be more likely, I suppose.
Yeah. So I mean, realistically, what it means is he's not going to have his shipments, especially his second, third, fourth shipments, quite as quickly, which from a tech perspective is going to slow him down slightly. But his economy, his base economy, is going to be slightly better. Realistically, he'll probably chop the wood and build a trading post in between transition to H2 anyways, and it won't be the biggest deal. Quite frequently what we see in the current meta is if the French player doesn't have the resources to make the trading post in H1...
Here we go. There is a treasure contention, ZutaZuta, a trapped Native American warrior. I don't know why it says he may join the cause. I've never seen them not join the cause, and may is... a conditional a conditional modal verb, but I don't know. But does manage to snipe GG coming out of Phil. Like he's clearly not too happy about that. The scout does get double gangbanged by a Petui scout and a Arab,
Arafobo scout. But back to the point I was making. In the current meta, what is standard for the French players is if you can't make the trading post in Age 1, you make the market, get hunting dogs, and get the trading post in transition.
Nicely done. Does die to Mother Nature. They're going to deny his opponent at 45
Otherwise,
XP.
you just flip them around, right? They're interchangeable. You just flip them back and forth depending on which way you need to go.
Yeah, I was under the impression, though, that he'd build a trading post irrespective of the crates that he would start with.
If you only have 100 wood, though, you need to build a house and chop 200 wood. That would slow you down significantly.
Absolutely.
Maybe if you got a really good wood treasure really early in the game, you potentially could, but that's not a given. I mean, maybe had he walked straight into the 60 wood treasure, he maybe could have done it, but at that point, you've already looked at your wood crate start and kind of decided what you're doing, started gathering the coin and stuff like that, so...
Yeah, and it does look like, that native scout, that explorer is in position to slam down a trading post, and I imagine that's what he'll be doing. Of course, all of those villagers are collecting wood, he's getting ready, and he's exactly where he needs to be, so the mark of a high-level player knowing exactly. Sometimes when I'm playing, I'll often be like, oh, now I need to build a trading post, and my explorer will be like halfway across the map, and but here, right in position, he's going to get that lane down right away, and perhaps I've been watching too many AZAM games for trading posts to be built irrespective of, every single game, but yeah, that is the case here, and he is up to the next age. He's going to be gathering wood for that. Hunting dogs is available, and he does, of course, have the trading post going down. Yellow, on the other hand, playing Dutch, going to be gathering wood, but for him, probably going to be using the wood for a different thing. There it is, the bank going down. What's the funny, Zio? What we got?
Well, I was just reading the chat, right? So Kaiser said hunts don't really seem fair, and as he was doing that, he was sending this villager to herd, and as he was like typing that, he shot it the wrong way, and it just like ran a million miles away from his TC.
Ripping pepperonis.
Which is what I was laughing at.
No.
I didn't notice that. Oh dear. But yeah, both players now up to the colonial age, or at least the French players and both players here sending 400 wood, of course, is their first shipment there. 400 wood for the French player. That's the interesting thing. We'll have to see what he has in mind for that wood and what his first shipment will be. But certainly Dutch, we can see the first bank going down that he built during transition to the next stage. And with that wood, by the looks of it, is laying down two houses, or one house rather, and a stable.
Yeah, and I want to highlight the building position here out of Phillnick. Really, really well done by him. We can see kind of the nice coverage here, protecting his hunts and his coin mine here to the south side of his base. And just realistically knowing that a French player likely going to be making Hussar, likely going to be playing aggressively with those, and the bank, a continuation of that wall, and even the trees in the next house, all a continuation of that nice little building wall that he's got set up. Really, really nicely done by him here in the early game.
Yeah, and that's what Dutch wants to do, right? Especially... I remember sort of on vanilla you'd have skirmishers out, and obviously he doesn't have a barracks there for skirmishers, but this wall important, you can sort of fight from behind. It makes it harder for cavalry to get to skirmishers, but just just having a wall sort of generally just gives you a bit of sort of contains you inside the base, protects your villages a bit better from raids, and is useful for fighting in your base with Minutemen, and just generally is useful.
Well, and imagine a situation, right, where these Hussar that have just popped out for Kaiser, if they want to get a raid in, they have to get behind this wall and they get trapped in here. And then it's really in Phillnick's court where he can do things like time his pops of his Hussar.
Absolutely.
He can combine it with Minutemen, like you mentioned, do all those kinds of things. And
do we have a cavalry fight? Is the question. Potentially is going to get in there for a villager kill. Yellow cavalry coming in from behind. I'd like to see perhaps one or two cav just come off to the side here and try and block off any escape route for these blue cav. Does look like they're going to get across the lake and be on their way. Doesn't look like there's going to be any engagement there, especially now that the formation has changed. Blue does get on out of there and is chased away successfully by yellow. We do actually have the thing I was mentioning. One yellow cav is going to force them in this direction now instead of back towards their base, which is perhaps where they'd like to be, to join these other cavalry that have just been trained. And yeah, look, this other cav being split off. Yellow doing exactly what I wanted him to. Is he just going to run straight through the middle? Does get duped. Oh, nicely done. Does join the other cav, and now it's the blue player who will be chasing yellow, and yellow probably suspects or senses that more cav will have been trained by now, and it does get blocked though by these pronghorn. I think we got a hit in, but the pronghorn slowed him down just enough that yellow does escape, and that was an interesting sort of couple of moments.
Yeah, it was an interesting little exchange. I think Kaiser could have baited the fight after he split the gut and went right back up the middle.
Oh, look at this, Zuta. The explorer's just gotten back up there, and blue is in position to just kill this guy before he gets down. We do have some cav coming towards him, though. Yellow not going to take the bait, though. Of course, blue has a lot more cavalry, and he is very aware of that, right, Zuta? So he doesn't want to go straight for that explorer because the cavalry are behind him, and he doesn't want to get caught in a fight like that.
Yep, certainly so. Phillnick continuing to power up his economy behind this, electing to make another bank. Does lose one villager that was out there herding a little bit to Kaiser's raid, and it'll be interesting to see whether or not we've got any more cavalry units that are going to come out for Phillnick. It looks like Phillnick does have another cavalry in queue, so he is potentially going to be training maybe another full batch of cavalry. And behind this also, looks like Kaiser going to be creating even more units as well. If you take a look at his bank...
And grabbing a trading post as well.
Yeah, he's continuing to spend his bank. So he's got a barracks down. We'll see whether or not, a musketeer does go in queue. So it looks like Kaiser has every intention of continuing to fight this out in the second age.
Yeah, that does look like absolutely. You know, you mentioned he's spending his bank, and normally, at this point, is he going to get this pass on the GP? Does not look like that's going to be the case. Slightly missed it, and now going to have to wait for that to come around again. But yeah, instead of saving up his resources to perhaps age up, you mentioned he's spending his bank. He's spending the resources that he's sort of invested, or has collected. Lots of cavalry here is not contestable. Just going to use the cav to siege down this house there, and going to make it, just harassing Dutch. Not really anything he can do aside from villager fire. Just have 6 in the town centre there. I'm not sure if that's the optimal number to have. Obviously, 10 will sometimes overkill. I think you need exactly 10, actually, for hussars. I remember doing a tips and tricks on that. But either way, yeah, that's the only defence he has against... And, he's staying colonial now. That's more pressure is coming.
Yeah. Phillnick is aged up, though. We can see he just clicked the button. Does have, still his 3 banks going for him, has his market, has his stable.
Aging up now.
Has a bunch of resources. Did Kaiser get... Yeah, he did actually get it in queue. That's actually really good, because look at how many more cavalry units he trained and still got almost an equivalent age up, and it's going to get 2 houses for his cost as well. So really nice there by Kaiser. Going to find himself aged up and in a really nice position. His infrastructure is already better. He's got both buildings up, the stable and the barracks completed. And Phillnick, is kind of struggling a little bit.
It's a hole in his wall as well. That's definitely worth pointing out.
Yeah, there's a hole in his bluff.
I'd like to ask a question before the action gets happening, though. Obviously, we were wrong. He was not staying colonial. He still had intentions of getting up to the next stage. But what do you think of the extra units he trained? Obviously, that slowed down his age up, and means that once you're in the fortress age, you can start applying fortress age pressure with stronger units, more tech units. Would you like to talk about the differences between making extra units in the colonial and then going up, or not making those units and perhaps going up faster? What do you think?
Yeah, so it's a matter of maybe 500 or so resources difference. I think what this build does particular for Kaiser is allows him to get the TPs established a little bit more easily. Allows him to not have to worry about pressure of cav potentially killing his explorer while he's building a 2nd or 3rd trading post. Yep. Allows him to potentially, get a few more villager kills. It does slow him down, so things like 9 Reuter are going to be out a little bit earlier to contest his mass, slightly easier. He's going to have more units that are less upgraded when he does get aged up. We can see still has 12 Hussar left alive, which he's likely not going to be getting the veterancy upgrade for. And as a result, it's just going to be more units that are into not as strong of upgraded units as potentially could be. But it's very small gives and takes, and unfortunately for him here, these Hussar are not going to be very good because Phillnick has decided to go with some sort of double stable build. Yeah, it looks like he's got 2 stables. He's already got the veterancy upgrade for his Hussar, and he's got a large number of Reuters. So
he does.
Perhaps this overtraining of Hussar going to slow down his skirmisher progression enough that it could be a little bit of an issue.
Yeah, I do like these 2 cav coming down to get this explorer there. Isn't going to deny the trading post, but it certainly is going to pick up the explorer. I'd like to add to what you said. So basically, you're summarizing it. Maybe it was to get these trading posts up sooner and just give him a bit more setup for the next stage, perhaps. But something else, since he did start with the market, it was not a 200 wood start, did not get that trading post as early. Perhaps the lack of XP, it had less XP, and then maybe wants to stay colonial a bit longer. Maybe if you go up straight away, you won't have the ability to send Fortress Age shipments continuously, or even one when you get up that quick. I know that can sometimes happen. Maybe that was something to do with it on this particular crate start. But either way, the action has got going. He's managed to get his, of course, veterancy upgrade in on his Hussars. But he started with quite a number of Hussars, and you did mention this double stable build. I wonder if the 2 stables came out as a result of him staying in the colonial age, of him creating more Hussars then. I do wonder. But either way, a composition coming up nicely. We do have more 8 skirmishers joining that as a shipment, of course, and I imagine more on the way. Certainly 5 there from the barracks, and just adding to this. This trading post is going to be contested, and Blue, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get there in time to save it.
Yeah, probably not going to be able to save that, but interestingly enough, Kaiser actually did get his veterancy upgrade for his Hussar, and I think that's going to be good for him, very important for him. Most players will just opt for transitioning to Cuirassiers when they need cavalry, but it looks like opting for the Vet Huss here as well.
250 HP. I do wonder if he'd be able to keep that. And imagine a world where on ESOC patch, trading posts had less hit points. I think that'd be interesting to think about if that would still be alive or not. But here, the fight, Blue does manage to keep his TP, and look at a few exposed skirmishers. They're going to take a volley. These Hussars, perhaps, no, they're not going to get too close and randomly take some damage from some Reuters here. Skirmishers now coming forward to get some snipes, to get some shots off, doing a bit of skirmishing, whilst all of the other units stay on the back, which of course have less range there. Kaiserklein, some nice unit control.
Yeah, so far so good. Looks like he's going to be able to keep Phillnick penned up in his base, and pretty soon Phillnick is going to have to come out to
takes
get
a volley,
access to a
not too
coin
good.
mine.
Good.
Yeah, Phillnick's going to have to come out for a coin mine. If you take a look, I mean, this coin mine's got 1,600 coin left, and Phillnick's next coin mine is, pretty far out. So it can't be the most comfortable situation for him, especially when your opponent has 3 TPs with stagecoach going.
Yeah.
Phillnick needs to make an aggressive move outside of his base fairly soon. But look at Kaiser's military unit population, really quite nicely in the lead at this point.
Yeah, growing, and his economic unit population slightly ahead as well, though that does not take into account the trading post that you mentioned here. Cavalry coming forward, perhaps, to get onto those skirmishes there. No, not going to commit to it. I think it was a little bit slow. Yellow did identify that and got his units back appropriately, but you can see what I like to call the dance there. As the Hussars come forward, so do the Royals. Is he going to commit to that? No, he's going to take some casualties on his Hussars as they try and retreat backwards there. 2 Falconets do arrive. Dragoons coming in real fight. This is where he wants to commit. Okay, he's going to send all his units in. This is the fight he wants to take. Has found a position that he likes, and he's going to go for it.
Yeah, he's going to go for it here. Looks like Kaiser having to back out his Dragoons a little bit, trying to focus down the Hussar, does a really good job, actually, of killing all those. Most of his Hussar have died, and now we're just kind of in a situation where it's Skirm and Goon. Kaiser does still have a few Hussar left, and importantly, he has the 2 Falconets coming behind as well, so that when, all is said and done, likely we'll see just kind of skirmishers poking at each other. Kaiser will have these 2 Falconets to help even things up even more so.
Yeah, you're sort of dying a bit. I'm not sure what's going on. But I do kind of like the choice to engage there without the Falconets as well. He tries to, neutralize the units as best as he can, minimize his opponent's minimize his opponent's unit count, especially in the Reuter department, especially those mobile ones that might threaten the cavalry, and then just use those 2 cannons to set up and dump shots down on his opponent's base. And I imagine that's exactly what they'll be used for wherever they are on the map. I'm struggling to find them actually, but so there they are. They're joining the main army. That was probably the most obvious place for them to be. Phillnick has resigned. He knows what's coming. Hasn't necessarily seen the cannons, or maybe he has, but certainly has. Blue is coming, and is going to just dumpster the buildings nearby.
Yeah, and he's kind of out of resources in his base. I guess he does have still some hunt up here to the north side, but going to be out of coin fairly soon. Only has 3 banks. It's not like his economy is super strong at this point, right? And plus, he also did lose quite a few houses as well. I think that's an important thing to note.
Yeah,
if you take a look at. Yeah, if you take a look at Phillnick, he never had the option, or never had the chance really, to send like 1k wood to kind of supercharge his infrastructure, get an extra barracks or something. Building a second stable and supporting the population of that second stable is very difficult without 1,000 wood shipment, and he tried to do it, and it looks like it just wasn't quite enough. Kaiser had a very good economy going, took some really nice early game trades, got a couple houses, a couple nice little raids, slowed down Phillnick, didn't allow him to get to 4 or 5 banks, which is a possibility on EP, and as a result, just kind of slow rolled him, kept him contained. Got aged up a little bit earlier. Everything was just slightly more efficient for Kaiser in this early game, and it took the win as a result.
Yeah, as a result, takes the win, as you mentioned. I really like that 1,000 wood point that you mentioned there. The setup that provides you, I really like the idea you mentioned, hypercharging your economy. That's exactly, or hypercharging your infrastructure, rather. No problem with getting houses down, no problem with maintaining the trade route, and then even this just provides copious amounts of wood, which is really, really going to be useful. And you can see, as a result of the wood shipment, and it was able to get a town centre down as well, even at the 15-minute mark. So a really, really efficient shipment. And if you can send, if you have the time to go, just take it slow and send those very, very efficient shipments, they do impact the game the later it goes on. And I think this game is an excellent example of exactly that happening.
Yeah, and I know H2O loves to send 1,000 wood with a lot of those European civilizations. It's kind of a progression of the metagame, right? And the kind of slow, techy, XP, oriented version that the metagame has kind of shifted towards. Previously, before, people were building a lot more trading posts, or maybe only a single trading post, not getting stagecoach, things like that. 1,000 wood would have been like, well, if I send 1,000 wood, my 8 skirms are going to be so late that, I'm probably just not going to be able to hold any sort of timing. But when the other guy is doing a little bit more greedy of a build as well, maybe trying to slip in 600 wood before he ages, getting a market, maybe steel traps with Dutch, which is something that we don't see a ton of, right? At least we used to not. Now it's kind of become more the norm. you have a little bit more time to be a little bit greedier, and as a result, didn't get that 1,000 wood in, and I think paid for it dearly when it came to trying to keep up an infrastructure with Kaiser Chiefs.
Yeah, I think a trading post and crate metagame emerging is definitely a very interesting point to make. And I think I read something that Goodspeed wrote a while ago about that becoming the case later down on the line. And perhaps ESOC patch does favour that sort of style of play as well. I'm not necessarily sure if that's the case, but certainly civilizations like Ottoman are less popular on ESOC patch, and they're a lot faster, so maybe that as well, all combined with everything, might be the case. But the reason I mentioned Ottoman is coming up next, so this game, Russia versus Ottoman, stay tuned, we'll be right back. Alright, welcome back everybody. Game number 3 in this best of 7. 2 points, I believe, to Kaiserklein, 0 to Phillnick, and this matchup, as I mentioned, will be Russia versus Ottoman. So here we go. On Arizona, not a new ESOC map, but certainly one that does not see a huge amount of play. I don't think we've done it very often on Smackdown, and certainly it was not used in any of the tournaments thus far. Or maybe it was in the most recent one, actually. But Arizona, the painted desert tile set. I really, really like this map. I really, really like the feature of this big thing in the middle that sort of separates the game onto, it has to be on either side. I really like that. But let's start with Kaiserklein. Here he is in the south of the map in the colour blue, playing as indeed the Ottomans. 1 food crate start with 4 wood as well for this Ottoman player. No doubt he will slam down a trading post very, very quickly, and that's exactly where his explorer is headed. For the French player, we have a 200 wood start as well, so trading post definitely something he'll be interested in doing as well. So we'll see. I wonder what treasures they'll come across. I think that's always interesting to look out for. 10 coin in his base, that's not particularly interesting. And then his take turn off. This map's not particularly nice for treasures anyway, I believe. Medicine men are not particularly useful.
The medicine man, they both immediately find the medicine man. Completely useless. So, one thing I wanted to point out. Two things worth pointing out here. One, Phillnick identifying the fact that his opponent's almost always going to be building a trading post. Or in fact, will be building a trading post, and so runs right into him and runs up and just starts meleeing him right away. The start. And the second thing I wanted to point out is I would actually love to see Kaiser do a build that I've seen Bonang do previously, which is gather up your 400 wood, build 2 trading posts, and send capitalism as your first card. It still allows you to do something like capitalism 300 wood because you have 2 trading posts at like the 2-minute mark in the game.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of a clever build. I think maybe it could be really good.
I like the idea of that, right? It means you do not have to. You can, if you have 400 wood, you straight up slam down 2 trading posts. That's all of your wood. You do not have any wood for a house, but that's okay as Ottoman. Your villagers train quite slowly. You're not going to get to 10 population very quickly. And instead of sending 3 villagers, which would take you over 10 population, and then your villagers wouldn't train anymore because you wouldn't have any population, instead you send capitalism, which is similar to a villager shipment in the sense that it generates resources early on, but it does not take up any population, and also it does not, well, because of that, mean you have to collect the 100 wood for the house. So you do get up a bit faster, and I think the whole thing gives you a lot more tempo, especially since you're still getting up on time, and you have 2 trading posts behind it. In the long run, I suppose capitalism is as nearly as good, but still, definitely a very interesting, and I'm glad you mentioned that. That's actually a really cool build.
Especially with a civilization like Otto, where you're not guaranteed to get placer mines, maybe at all, right? Which makes the capitalism trickle a little bit better. When you consider generally, trickles, the reason why they're weak is because you can't upgrade them, right? Compare them to, for example, 3 villagers, which you can upgrade with placer mines and then amalgamation.
Yep.
Obviously, the villagers are going to be better because you can upgrade them. But
and you can also choose what resource they gather, and I believe they even just gather more resources than those trickles actually provide in the first place. But still, combined with everything you're saying, yeah.
I mean, Ottomans, not very often are they necessarily going to get placer mines. And then what I love also about the build, especially on a map like Arizona, where
hold the phone. Why has he not gathered any resource crates at all?
No, he has. He's just left them all at like 20.
Oh, I see. I see what he's doing here. I know. Yeah, I did wonder how he managed to get a trading post up and not collect any. But that's an interesting shipment that he's about to send, right?
I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for the for it to come, and those things will pop up to. How much will
they'll gain 25 more, I believe. Or let's take a look at. So if we click on Ottoman Home City and then go over to Silk Road, yeah, increases by 25% the inventory. So each of those crates are now going to go up by 25% when he sends the Silk Road. So instead of having 20 left, they'll have 45 left. And that's, that's 100 wood and 25 food. That's actually, on top of the efficiency it gives for future crates, they are... you just get more resources. Look at that. The timing was absolutely perfect.
That's really good. That's a ton of extra resources.
Yeah. Do you think he deliberately delayed his age up for that? I think he might have done.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, if you know the timing of how long the card takes to send and how long the age up takes, right? You can calculate that out. And if this were, a build that you're going to do is kind of like a standard thing, it's definitely some sort of timing that would be worth knowing.
Yeah.
I don't know the timing off the top of my head because I've never really even tried to do a build like this. But if it was a build that you were going to consistently do, you would want to know the timings like that. And it looks like Kaiser does know the timing and executed it beautifully there, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. And sometimes it can be really frustrating. I've done this before a long time ago. And one stray villager decides to gather up one of the crates, and then you're just super mad. And you have to be realistic. It takes a lot of control in that early game there, and sometimes it can be quite, quite frustrating to even leave them at 25 because it leaves you a bit of wood short to do something or other. But it is now up to the Colonial Age, and that is true for both players. We do see coming out of this Russian player blockhouse coming down early, and a house as well.
Yep, going to be able to looks like. Apply a little bit of pressure here with this stable Kaiser has going down. And it looks like Phillnick identifying potentially his opponent going to be playing aggressively, building the blockhouse very, very defensively, getting some nice vision with his walls, keeping everything outside of his base with some sort of vision at the very least. And as a result, I don't think this early cavalry push should do too much, but we'll see how it ends up panning out. Obviously, cavalry units very, very strong against Russia in the early game, but 5 Cossacks coming out, 5 Musketeers, going to be able to easily deal with any sort of Huss pressure that may come up. But it looks like is Kaiser just aging, or what's he doing? I'm actually not sure what he's doing.
We do have 5 Cossacks coming out against these Musketeers. They actually would do quite well there, but of course there are other, and that's exactly what he's going to do. He's just going to take that fight straight up. But should these Cossacks, I think, being on the wrong side there, that's not going to be too good. If they'd been in the same place, these Musks would not have been engaged. But either way, they might last long enough. The Musks might last long enough for the cavalry to still be snared, and these Cossacks will be able to get there, and then this fight will be completely evened out. You can see Blue trying to get away. I see the cavalry coming in, does not want to continue fighting that. Does manage to escape with 2 Hussars on half HP, and the rest roughly full there. But nicely, Phillnick, a little bit distracted, is now going to head back towards this scout where he was before to kill this Explorer. Blue did not take the opportunity to retreat the Explorer there. Perhaps he was too busy managing to make sure those Hussars stay alive. That's obviously the more important thing. But yeah, Blue, that's the early game happening. We've described it.
Yep, and now it'll be to see what the transition is from here, right? Kaiser obviously does have his spice trade down, does have the very good crate efficiency, does have a TP line set up behind this, which is going to be quite beneficial to him.
Yep.
But it's on him to decide whether or not he's going to push the issue here in the second age, or maybe he wants to just try and age up as well behind this. So he did build barracks. He has built a market, so it's kind of a moot point what I was mentioning earlier, where maybe he's not even going to have his market upgrades, but looks like for the time being just going to be interested in continuing to maybe get back control of this trading post and keep pressing the issue in the second age. A batch of Janissaries coming out, still training Hussars from this forward stable, and looks like going to continue to play it out here in the second age.
Yeah, for the time being, and I think Kaiserklein going to be interested in controlling this entire route and playing this boomy build, and he has this market here, and that is of course because of the Silk Road, right? Not only does it give these extra, these crates, I guess the primary reason it was ever made, I suppose, when they in ES invented it, was for the trading route. That's the obvious thing that it's useful for. So here going to try and take control of that, but actually, Yellow has managed to come up with a sizable army in this early portion of the game, and this is a fight that's not going to go too well for him, I would imagine there. And Yellow, is going to slow him down enough, perhaps, to protect these trading posts, which is the important thing for Blue, but Yellow are going to come out on top here, I think.
Yeah, it certainly came out on top when you consider, just how expensive the Ottoman units are. Obviously, Janissaries costing 125 resources versus, a Russian Musk, which is basically free. Well, that's not necessarily true.
Basically free, quoted from ZutaZuta.
Yeah.
All right.
take a look down here, though. He does have an artillery foundry that has been built. Looks like he is going to continue playing it out in the second age. And Kaiser mentioning that his macro is having a little bit of difficulty. I think he was forgetting how important, or how impactful the Silk Road card is going to be with those crates, sending 700 and then 600 coin, gathering them up, and just having a wealth of coin in his coffers for the time being.
I do wonder what his trading posts are configured to. They are configured to food, I believe.
Yeah,
wood, actually. Actually, I think it is wood.
Got to figure out how to spend those resources.
Yeah, we're about to see it. It's about to pass this one. We'll see what it jumps up in. It is wood that they are configured to, and that is the efficient one, right? But I wouldn't be surprised if it was on food, because he has so much coin, he does need to spend it, and food is the limiting factor here that is stopping him from spending it. He needs food to get Abyss guns in queue, which obviously are the big coin daddies here that spend all of the coins. But is now that his macro perhaps is evened out a bit, is able to spend these resources, will have more units coming in soon, is able to start taking control of the route again. But Yellow does pick up another TP, and that's going to be really good for him. This first one is about to go down, but not before he gets that pass there, so going to be pretty pleased about that. Simultaneously, on the other side of the map, though, Yellow is contesting this one. So this is a battle of the TPs, and I imagine this is how the developers intended TPs to be. Oh dear, Abyss guns! Not very good against cavalry, Zuta.
Yeah, and the Janissaries kind of locked out, got pathing blocked a little bit there by the house, and this is perfect for Phillnick. This is exactly what he wants. The opportunity
so many
to kill
resources.
all of these Abyss guns.
Yeah. And he's going to lose the Cossacks as well, I think. There does get into combat with the Janissaries, and that's going to slow him down, Hussars, but not before he takes out a whole bunch of Abyss guns, and I think that trade is perhaps even better than even, definitely in favor of Yellow there. But Blue struggling to keep this trade route up, and Yellow, I think, with that, what he just managed to achieve, killing those Abyss guns there, plus this sizable musket army that he's managed to build up, and because there's less Abyss guns, the musket army is going to be more effective. He's going to have control of this area for longer as a result of not being as threatened by Abyss guns, which are obviously the key unit there that is strong against him. Maybe because of that, he's going to be able to perhaps get this extra TP down there, and then control more of the route, get free resources coming in that his opponent upgraded for, and just be in a good spot here. But Blue and Yellow having a bit of a skirmish in the middle of the map here, over this sort of location, over this barracks location. Blockhouse gonna be landing right on top of that, and I think Blue might be losing his stable here.
Yeah, this is going to be pretty awkward here for Kaiser, because he's got a whole bunch of eggs in this basket out front. He's got this outpost out here. He's got a stable out here. He's gathering all of his food currently out here. And unfortunately for him, he's just been losing a bunch of units and losing a bunch of structure out front of his base here, continuing to trickle away units. And this is exactly what Russia wants. This is how Russia wants this game, this part of the game to really pan out. And it looks like now he's got enough units that he's just going to slam down out.
Yeah, and I do wonder where he's going to gather food, the Blue player. He has to come out well on this fight, or his ability to gather food is going to be hugely impeded. He does have a food crate there and a number of berries in his base, but this fight does not like it's going too good for him. Those cavalry really harassing the Abyss gun. Their Minutemen being called to perhaps help protect the Abyss guns. The Abyss guns just walking around them, and when they are doing the attack move, they're ending up firing against the cavalry, which is not very efficient for them. They want to be sniping off those muskets here, which are fully able at the moment just to do as much damage as they want, unsort of threatened by Abyss guns, and Yellow decisively winning at this point.
Yeah, certainly taking this fight, and even had he not won it as hard as he did, just the fact that he's got reinforcements, forced Kaiser off resources, just going to be even better for him. Yeah, it looks like he's going to get pushed back here, or at least he's going to disengage from the fight. But
for the time,
the damage has realistically been done, right? He's slowed down the TPs. He's killed 2 of the TPs and taken one of them for himself. Kaiser has only just now gotten this one TP reestablished. He's gotten himself up a blockhouse in a very aggressive position, going to be able to gather food on the sides of the map, basically uncontested for a very long time. And Kaiser's economy is to the point where he sent all of his crates, his kind of Silk Road gimmick is kind of
Boyar's coming in as well, and I imagine 5 Cossacks are going to be arriving from this stable. That's exactly what he needs. They are in queue right now. Will they arrive in time to protect this blockhouse? I think there's 2 Cossacks here. Yeah, there they are. 5 Cossacks do come out, and that's exactly what he needs versus these Abyss guns. So the unit's dwindling in his opponent's base, but now that he's sort of been able to rebuild a bit, walk back towards this blockhouse, the army is clearly bouncing back as a result of his economy. There is now finally finding the wood available to slam down this this trading post here, and just provided he can sort of control this location, maybe he can even then contest this other trading post, grab that, and continue his economy. Look at that economic unit population, definitely very in favor of yellow at this point, and that's what's going to matter in the late game, right? You mentioned those crates for the blue player, they're certainly drying up, dwindling out, and then the efficiency of the Silk Road early on is no longer going to be a thing in this game. Can blue reclaim the trading route, or is yellow going to be able to sustain long enough to win the game and outlast him?
Yeah, he needs to do something very soon. Like, it needs to happen right now. He needs to win a fight, take back the entirety of the TP route, and maybe get in a raid all at the same time. Because the longer this little back and forth goes between, the Russian player, trading off a little bit of damage, killing an Avis gun here or there, reestablishing the TP route, continuing to hunt, continuing to build more villagers.
Here we go, gonna get into a fight there. He did lose a number of Cossacks sort of walking in and out, and that's not too good for him. That's exactly what blue needs, because the Abbas guns there are gonna do so much work, providing they can just shoot at these muskets. They're insane against the musketeers. But yet now that he's sort of gotten rid of most of the cav, that might be the case. But still, a lot of yellow units, but yet does manage to fight them, does have the supporting tower as well. This is still fairly close, I think.
It's close, but it's exactly what Russia wants.
Yeah.
It's the kind of close that Russia wants, because this whole time it's having decent trades, and there's no more crate shipments, right? And so the unit production's never going to get any better at this point in the game for the auto player.
That's
and at this point,
true.
I would argue that Phillnick can just make only Strellet and just continue to sit behind blockhouses making Strellet and wait for Otto to basically die.
Yeah, wait for him to not be able to create as nearly as many units as he can. His infantry mass. His units in general will just get larger and larger in population relative to the Ottoman player, and the power level his army represents will eventually just overwhelm the Ottoman player. And that's what's starting to happen, right, as this game goes on and on. Another blockhouse coming down, the trading post being re-established here, just securing absolutely everything in this location, and this is where he's gathering food here, and this is where the fighting's taking place. Blue gonna find it very, very difficult, but doing what he can, kiting back and forth. But now that there's two blockhouses established, even this kind of kiting isn't going to be too beneficial to him. To the Ottoman player's merit, certainly, we do see light artillery hit points coming in, so these Abbas guns gonna last a bit longer, gonna be able to do more. That blockhouse does go down, so actually evening it back up again. But yeah, yellow, as we mentioned, still has that economy. And at this point, it's still very much a skirmish in the center of the map. Can blue make something happen? He really needs to do that soon.
Yeah, I would love to see those 4 Cossacks that are in the fight just come over here. Just start applying some pressure. I mean, at this point, it's 15-20 minutes into the game. You're knowing that your opponent has to be outside of his base gathering. Those Cossacks aren't really doing anything. Just send a couple of them around the side and start applying some pressure to the Huns.
Yeah, and then you force Ottoman to be in 2 places at once, and that's really difficult. And all of that, then that just And raiding is obviously a great thing. Remove your opponent's economic potential. Here we do see cavalry trying to get into a fight. This might be the fight that blue has to take. He's now stuck in that. He has to take this, and there's I think enough Cossacks to really do some meaningful damage here. You can see the Janissaries trying to focus the Cossacks there to stop them from getting close to the Abbas guns, and the Abbas guns kiting backwards. Actually, does manage to dispatch all the Cossacks, and now the Abbas gun's going to be quite happy to just sit here and deal damage as they kite backwards. Villagers, though, going to be pushed off at the same time. I think this is, actually blue favored this fight.
Kaiser's doing a really good job, actually, of controlling his Abbas guns, and kind of just tucked up next to that wall, kept himself safe from the Cossacks.
Oh my goodness, there's so many cavalry coming, Zuta. This is not good. There's nothing there really to protect them. They're very exposed at the moment. Yes, a couple of Janissaries are there, but that's not really enough. And of course, Janissary's not particularly strong in hand combat there. The trees are nearby, but he's not going to be able to get into them to stop the pathing. Is really crammed into this corner now. The Cossacks are exactly where they want to be, and this is really, really good for yellow. He's going to really finally get a good hold on those Abbas guns and can really just bring them down.
And he's got Boyars and Team Scout Cavalry as well, so those Cossacks just taking that many more volley. I've said it before. Kaiser's actually controlling his army here pretty well for an Ottoman player. Usually, you just see a lot of attack moving, but Kaiser's doing a pretty good job of
Yeah.
using these Janissaries to the best of his
Look at
ability.
all of those resources he's stacked as well. Second rank's coming down. He's definitely still in this game. I'd like to see perhaps those resources already being made into units and never have got that high in his bank in the first place, but certainly has a lot of resources available to him for the duration of the... Oh dear, we do have more cavalry incoming. Imagine if those foods right now were actually Abbas guns. Sorry, were Janissaries instead. This is not good. He has the resources to maintain and stay in the game, but not if they're not in the form of units protecting these Abbas guns. Villager's going to sort of block him off a bit as well. Look at the going...
Back to the Janissaries for their help, right? And keeps most of his Avis alive once again. But look at the economic unit population and how out of control this is getting in Russia's favor. I mean, it's 52 to 29. The TPs have been locked at 2 apiece here for a very long time. So basically you can discount those completely.
Yeah.
And now finally here, a little bit of a raid coming in for Phillnick. And this is what I was saying you really needed to do much, much earlier.
Yeah, and that hits Ottoman really, really hard as well, because they, villagers take far longer to train. And at this point in the game, where they still train quite slowly, are going to be very, very valuable. Yeah, 2 block houses being slammed down on this food location. If the game just continues like this, I think Yellow's got it, because he does have control, like, with the buildings on top of these resource locations, and that's the very important thing at this point in the game, right?
Yep. He's got the infrastructure established on top of the hunts. The fact that he can, shoot with that building and garrison villagers in there is, just icing on the cake at this point, but having the vision and the control is really going to help him. That being said, there's not a ton of hunt left on this map, and the hunt that is left is, it's kind of on Kaiser's half a little bit here. The Russian player hasn't been taking the most efficient fights, and there are still a lot of Avis guns. There's 17 Avis guns, and they do have light artillery hit points on them as well. So they're not going to be the most easily killed Avis guns in the world. Yeah. And this game is actually still very, very close. I have to feel like Russia continues to be an advantage here the longer this game goes. But
Cossacks getting close again. It always feels like he's luring the Katvin in a very odd way for me. But yeah, this fight, I'm not so certain. Abbas guns definitely have a lot of hit points, but the Strelets, they don't take so much damage from Abbas guns. They're very close to the Abbas guns. The cavalry are sort of dwindling away again, and then the Abbas guns aren't going to be nearly as threatened. But yeah, just lots of fights going on.
And 10 Cossacks in queue once again.
Which,
there's no way he can deal with a reinforcing batch of 10 Cossacks, certainly.
Yeah. Surely his economy, there it is, right? They've just hit the board, and that might be the ending factor there. It does have some Janissaries to support and is going to harass these villages for the time being, but with Boyars and this, Abbas guns not nearly as effective against Strele as they are against muskets here. This might be the final blow incoming. Finally managed to get the huge batch out. Does he have anything in queue at this stable? That is not the case. He really needs something, or a military unit population a shipment to come out of this tower, but I don't think he has any left. Of course, still in the colonial age, and it looks like that is going to be exactly what Yellow needed. That Yellow has found, after a very close game, the ability to bring down these Abbas guns. Though, having said that, those cav are dying quickly.
That's got to be it, though, certainly.
Yeah,
right?
even
There's
more
no
Cossacks joining the fray as well. Have been trained.
Another 5 Cossacks coming in, and at this point, Kaiser actually still has some bank. There were several times where he was winning fights despite having a pretty big bank. Had he spent all of his resources into one really good fight, maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes ago, he probably could have overwhelmed Russia and just knocked down the door, but wasn't the case. And Kaiser realizing his mistakes, his inability to spend his resources, maybe hasn't practiced this build or played this build that much, kind of hurting him, but still some very well controlled auto game there, and that was actually a really close, really long,
very, very close,
fight.
And I think that's an important point you raised. If he'd managed to get all his resources out, get a large army at one point in the game, knock on the door, knock it down, and take the location where the yellow player was gathering resources. Yeah, that could have happened. That was certainly something that might have, could have been the case. But this game, yellow does manage just to outlast and sort of sustain in a way, and does take the game that way and out. Yeah, I also wonder how much impact, he mentioned having 1.7k gold, but also those Abyss guns he lost in the early portion. I wonder how impactful all of these things were combined.
Yeah, I mean, take a look. That happened around like 10-ish minutes, right? And if you take a look at the military populations around that time, it just set him so far back. He was up to 41-ish military unit population, and then he went down to 28 without really doing anything as a result of it, and really, really hurt his chances. Because if you take a look at the rest of the fights, he's ahead in military unit pop. He's winning the fights fairly efficiently. If you take a look at, there's some of the spikes around, say, 16-20, right, where Kaiser is losing 5 military unit population and, Russia's losing 20-25 military unit population. But Russia has that ability to bounce back into the fights very easily. Strellet are super cheap Cossacks, very cost-efficient unit, especially when you get Boyer's Team Scout cavalry on them.
Yep.
They become very difficult to deal with. And Phillnick just kind of grinding the game out, getting into a position where he controlled the map importantly with his infrastructure, and then just riding that to victory, basically starving his opponent out, controlling the TP line, importantly from the early portion of the game. Just a very nice, clean path to victory for him. But some good control out of Kaiser Chiefs made it pretty close right up to the end.
I really, really liked that game from Kaiserklein as well. Absolutely. And if we take a look at the all resources gathered, I think that's the best story of the game shown in a single graph there. Ottoman ahead early on, perhaps. And then, as you can see, yellow just outlasts him. And as time goes on, you see the villagers just having more and more of an impact on the total number of resources gathered relative to his opponents. And did not manage to secure the trading post. Could have been evener if he had it. But yellow did a good job of that. And as Zuta mentioned, we do see sort of outlasting his opponent there. But that is game number 3. The score is now 2-1. So this series shaping up at this point. So not like some series which may be a bit lopsided. This one, perhaps we're in for a longer Smackdown, perhaps. But game number 4 coming up right about now.
The one thing that I do think is perhaps true is that I don't know that Kaiser's Civ pool is as deep as Phillnick's, which when you start playing, best of 7s, best of 9s, really long series, especially with the rules that I have, it can be a little difficult, right? Yeah. I mean, we know that Kaiser plays Germany very, very well. We know that he plays French very, very well. But those are the two civs that I kind of associate with Kaiser. I don't know what he personally would choose as his next third civ. Now, that said, he played Ottoman very, very well in the last game. One little slip up with the Abyss guns in the early game, but his timing was very good. His unit control was actually really quite good. But I don't know how deep his civ pool is moving forward. And Phillnick, I've seen him play basically the lot when it comes to civilization selection. So I'll be curious to see what the next matchup is going to be, because Kaiser, having won with Germany, having won with France, can't revisit those civilizations. And should he want to take this best of 7, he's going to have to come up with wins with 2 other civilizations. So we'll see how that ends up panning out.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite aspects about sort of tournament style games. I know Smackdown's not a tournament, but you do have like this best of series where you have to be skilled with and adept with multiple civilizations, and that's always been the key distinction for me from sort of a ladder game. Certainly in other games where ladder is perhaps more popular, you'll see people constantly playing just what I call best of ones, where you play the same thing and you play a best of 1 against them, you score a point or you lose a point. A series like this, where civilization selection matters and sort of the meta is less relevant because you can sort of know your opponent exactly and more likely what they're going to do, and people might expect you to do something, but you might not do it. And I think just this sort of series is perhaps more interesting than ladder for me.
Yeah, certainly I think that's true, right? Because I mean, you can play one civ on the ladder and continually win best of 1s, but when you get into a long drawn out series where someone's saying you have to prove to me you can win with 4 different civs. I've said this before. I know I would fail miserably in my quest to win with 4 different civs. I'm your quintessential ladder player who likes to play one civilization, maybe I could pick up a joke win or a cheap win with, something like Otto or something like that. Just FFing and shipping Mamelukes, praying for the best. But certainly, this is the point where having a deep civ pool, being able to play 7, 8, 9 civilizations at a very high level, in the way that players like Black Star and H2O, Samwise 12, Lord Raphael, Diaraga, some of those players, they can play a very long, extended set of civilizations over the course of a very long series. That starts to become really apparent, who's got true mastery of the game, or who, does know a ton about the game. We'll see what happens here. Certainly Kaiser, I know he knows how to play French. I know he knows how to play Germany. I haven't seen him play a ton of other civilizations other than those. So
yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what he picks, I suppose, is the point that's being raised here, and especially on this map,
Adirondacks.
Using the New England tile set. Portuguese does come out. I saw something about a water map without a HC flag. That sounds interesting. I'm not certain if I have seen this map. Is this a new map?
Yeah, this is one of the newer-ish maps.
Hey, that'll be fun. Yeah. Looking forward to that. We did showcase a few of them in the previous Smackdown 2 weeks ago, and I imagine Zuta has seen more games than I have, since I haven't been here for 2 weeks. But looking forward to some more Saturday Smackdown.
Smackdown.
Yeah, did you see the title of that previous video? I thought I was... and the thumbnail, I even used a map of the world. I thought I was actually...
Oh, really?
I think I was balling. I was actually... really, really clever from me. I'm joking. But about to get into game number 4 here. The score is, of course, 2-1 in Kaiserklein's favor. And we'll see how this shapes up. Getting into Adirondacks. That one.
You can do it, I believe in you.
I imagine it's a place, it's an actual place, and it just goes, oh wow, this is, just judging from, I have seen this map actually, and there is no water flag. That's very, very interesting. This is perhaps more decorative than it is actually viable then, because you can't get things like, 2 caravels delivered or a frigate like that, but you could certainly still send schooners if you really wanted to, and then gather the food up that way. Certainly still something you can do. And it's very interesting because you could actually put towers all the way around this and just secure, so warships that you'd train wouldn't be as good. I really like the idea of not having the water HC flag, and I wonder how much that actually impacts the game. I imagine fishing's still perfectly viable, and this is where you would build a dock, as Zuta is flaring there.
Yeah, but take a look there, because the other important thing about this map is it's a cliff along the edge, right? So you can't build docks anywhere except for like this little place that's basically tucked behind your base. So each player has access to one very safe place to put a dock, and has access to what's actually quite a large number of fish as you swing around the horn of this map.
Yeah.
But aside from that, like you mentioned, cutting off the map with, say, a town center, even with Portuguese, could be very good here. So
yeah. And that, provides excellent anti-ship attack. And another feature of this map, I'm going to go over the map because obviously I haven't seen it yet. 70 food coming down for the yellow player. They're going to be pretty pleased about that. But another feature of the map is the trading route, which I really like. It's far away enough from the town center to be contestable if you have an early army, and that's something you can go and do. And, if you're Phillnick and you're trying to defend that, or if you have built it, or whichever player, Minutemen is still a possibility. It's not like Great Plains, where it's literally in your base and very, very difficult to kill. And then it's another map where it's a shared route, so there's the one in the center that you can fight over, and then there's this one on either side. But I think we do have some early conflict here. Yellow gonna bring his explorer and his scout in towards Kaiserklein here, gonna get into the snare, and now blue, is he gonna run the scout away at the last possible moment? He needs to start running now, otherwise that health pool is gonna run out. 14 life, walking towards the scout there, native lane for the win. Is he going to get out? 3 HP. I think he does manage to get away with the scout. Certainly not something you want to lose. The stealth ability is really, really valuable, and certainly not something you want to lose yet. But is Snared going to bring his explorer back towards his town now, I imagine? But yes, the trading route is certainly a feature of this map that I like.
Yeah, and like I've mentioned before, I talked about this briefly in the previous Smackdown, that I think one of the I won't say flaws, but one of the characteristics of a lot of the early ESOC maps, some of the first maps that Garja made, is they're very open and they've got very long, spread apart trading routes. When you think of Arizona, the map we just saw.
Ooh, is he going to snipe the 60 food treasure? He might be able to do it. That would be rather... he does it!
Got it.
Nicely done.
High Plains, Baja California. A lot of those maps, they have very spread out trading routes, right? And so once you take the whole route, it can be very difficult to contest. A map like this, a fairly short, compact route, aggressively placed between the two players. I actually prefer, I think, a route like this.
Yeah, I like that too. I prefer this kind of route. And yeah, although, you know, maps where you have your own route behind your base also have an interesting dynamic, and I do like to see variety more than I like to see exactly this every single game, but certainly this is the one I prefer, and I would like, agree with you there full-heartedly, Zuta. The final point of this map, I goes to talk about, I suppose, before we get into this game. Clearly, both players now up to the next stage, and have transitioned villagers over to wood, of course, for the steel traps. The blue will obviously want to be getting, and yellow here, I imagine, will want to lay down a market and possibly trading posts. Hold on a moment. French has done neither of those things in the early portion of the game. What does this tell us?
Yeah, he could be playing very, very aggressively. If you take a look at his population, he's sitting at 14 C2B, so he's not doing anything too crazy, like with a 13 pop age up or anything. I'm not really sure. I mean, honestly, it just looks like he decided that he wasn't going to build the market, perhaps didn't get any sort of treasures early in the game that would have helped him get that, and so as a result, just decided, you know what, maybe I'll make both in transition. Just try and get aged up as early as possible, and get both in transition.
Yeah, I was.
Don't know that it's necessarily right, but it looks like that was his decision.
Yeah, that's the thing he has done. It certainly has built a market now at this point in the game and is getting his place in mines. Has now just got hunted and will get hunting dogs, I imagine, as well. Hasn't got that one just yet. Kaiserklein, on the other hand, has got that and is playing Portuguese, so a different civilization entirely. Something I find interesting. Oh, this villager. Something Phillnick is doing is using the tomahawk to sort of harass this villager. They're going to deny the ability to herd this in the early portion of the game by keeping this villager away, and that's all he wanted to achieve. Doesn't want to pursue that. Can go back if he notices this hunt sort of going down, or if he sees the animals moving, as that will be visible in the map. But something I wanted to mention is, perhaps something that influenced Phillnick's decision to not go with the market was the early starting treasures. I think whether a map starts with, I call them standard muskrat treasures. You have like sometimes those beaver treasures that give you coin. Phillnick did get 40 coin. I like to point that out. Whereas Kaiserklein got 40 wood. So, that's the kind of deal there. It does have those treasures. There was the possibility for a market. But either way, is up to the next stage. 400 wood on the floor there. Does have his market, and his hunting dogs is now in as well as the place of mines. Is going to start with, of course, a stable, and by the looks of it, some houses as well. So that's the kind of build we're going to be seeing out of the French player. On the other hand, though, Portuguese is up to the next stage with 400 wood as well, of course. Is now researching his steel traps, as you'd expect at this point in the game. And the second market, the second town centre. I don't know, understand. Well, you'd never build a second market. What? That's not even anyway, the second town centre is very close to the starting one, so clearly looking to play defensive, and is not on the coastline, so no intentions of taking water, though if he had those, I'm sure we'd have seen a dock sooner. But yes, is in his base, and that's the important thing here, right?
Yeah, does Kaiser even have, he doesn't even have water cards in his deck. Like, he's just got a straight-up land deck. Perhaps Phillnick had seen that. I was almost going to call Phillnick out and say, probably made a mistake not checking a Portuguese player's back corner to see whether or not he's got a dock, but can almost certainly agree with him if he looked at the deck and said, you know what, he doesn't have schooners, he doesn't have any sort of water cards in his deck. He's not playing water. No need to check it.
Yeah, no need to check at all there. We do have the Explorer coming in, though. He's going to harass this Explorer, but 3 muskets are available, and perhaps might even get the kill there. He's going to get it very low, 36 HP, just needs a whole more volley, but might just be out of range just enough there, and actually is luring these 3 musketeers into the 4 cavalry, which I have no doubt will does manage to take down the Explorer there, but now these 4 hussars does pull off the wrong one by mistake, actually, but 4 hussars represent far more power than 3 muskets. If you think about it, 4 hussars is 800 resources. Muskets certainly a lot less than that, and just the sheer power is going to take that down, despite not being the counter, actually being countered by those units. But as a result of that, does take up the muskets, but at least for blue, did manage to pick up the yellow Explorer.
Yep, picked up the Explorer, but not before losing those extra muskets and stuff too. So importantly for Kaiser, it looks like he has gotten his 2 TPs down as well. It looks like he's going to be continuing to play perhaps some sort of colonial play, though, here as well. He's got both a stable and a Rackstown, he's not. I don't think he's aging. Yeah, he's not aging. Just want to make sure he didn't pull a fast one on me and somehow get aged up. But no, it looks like for the time being, he's just going to be playing it out in the second age, and it looks like Phillnick going to be playing that same style as well, having sent his 4 CDB. He's got his 700 wood now. I guess that'll really be the interesting to see now, is what he does with that 700 wood, whether or not he lays down some Raxes, maybe a TP, or starts to set himself up to have the infrastructure to go to the next stage. We'll have to see. He does have quite a few resources he's sitting on in bank. Here comes 600 coin for Kaiser. Looks like maybe he'll spend that to age, but for the time being, both players playing a little bit slow, a little bit controlled in the second age.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned all of the different options for yellow there, and all of those things, certainly stuff that he could do. And I think for Age of Empires 3, for me, I just wanted to point this out. This is like all of the different things you can do, all of the different viable things that are available to you, perhaps compared to some of the other Age of Empires games, all of the options, and that's all opened up by the home city mechanic. And I find it particularly interesting to always see what route you do take with the resources that you ship, and it's always a defining moment every time a shipment arrives. It's an exciting moment in the game, and for Age of Empires 3 is an excellent game because of that reason, I think. And I wish people would focus on that more. I saw a review once where somebody mentioned that the home city mechanic was like giving them resources, and they felt like they were being rewarded for no reason, and it was silly or something like that. And I just thought it was the least interesting review I'd ever read. Anyway, that's not the point. Early portion of the game was, of course, cavalry running around. We saw the muskets die, but then a villager died over here, and I think some cav word kill. Anyway, the point of the game we're at now. What did he choose to do with those resources?
Yeah, he's still like sitting on an awkward amount of resources. He just set his 700 coin. He did build 2 Raxes and has produced a large number of muskets. So I'm inclined to think that he's going to spend his resources, but at the same time, he's starting to approach the resources needed to age too. Yeah. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure that if I were in Phillnick's shoes, if I were planning on aging, I would have, trained that extra batch of 10 musketeers. Yeah, it looks like he is going to age, though, and clicked it all. He's in queue.
Yeah, and this is something, actually, Kaiserklein did earlier, train extra units before going up to the next stage. Yeah. Perhaps it's, I was going to mention playing safe, but that's not necessarily what that is, and actually might be the opposite of that. But, either way, both players, by the looks of it, if we take a look at text being researched, are now aging up. And looks like we're going to see a Fortress Age game ahead of us for the time being. Who do you think's in the lead at this point now? Both players sort of in similar positions, but based on what happened early game, those 3 muskets, the Explorer losing some cav, and the villager trades, aka raiding. What do you think?
I mean, I have to like French at this point. He's got a better early game economy. He's got the better shipments. I mean, 8 skirms is just better than 8 Cassadors. 2 Falconets is just better than 2 Organ Guns. Yep. He's got a couple units out here, so he's going to be able to contest the trading post
and
line.
And does take that down as well. That's now Blue does not have that, and that's the thing that's
likely why he trained extra military units, right? Is he wanted to contest that.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have to like French at this point. They're just stronger at this point in the game. Yeah. It's going to take a long time for Kaiser to get into a position where he's out front of a French player. That said, if he can establish some sort of map control up here, control the north side of the map, get more natural resources under his control as a result of that, and continue to hold the scary timings that are ahead with 8 skirms.
Speaking of scary timings, we do see 2 Falconets arriving, and this is something that obviously you pointed out. Portuguese does not have available to them. Organ guns, really not very good. They get absolutely shat on by Falconets. And I think this is an excellent decision from Phillnick to bring these out early. And that might also be why he trained those extra musketeers in the early portion. Wanted to get Falconets out very, very early on. And they're going to be very, very effective here against just the primarily infantry-based army. And Dragoons, they're good against the cannons if they get close. But I think he has sufficient muskets to perhaps hold this. And but having said that, though, does need more reinforcing units to come as well. And that's 2 skirmishes and some Dragoons. I really like the Falconets.
Yeah, the 2 Falconets are going to be very, very difficult to deal with at this point in the game. 2 Organ Guns just doesn't stand up to 2 Falconets. You can't ship those units right now. There's just not enough
wood as well. Very, very slow.
Yeah. Maybe he can get in here with a cheeky snipe. We can see Phillnick getting a little aggressive with his military units. If he can come in from the side with his Dragoons and snipe those
here we go. If he can get them, that actually might just outright get the game for him. Does get a nice volley off on the muskets here, but the Dragoons, I think, are sufficiently, again, especially with the cavalry there, does manage to take down the 2 falconets, and that was the early, perhaps risky, it does manage to take that, and that's what I was worried about with the lack of reinforcements.
Yeah, and I think maybe even the more important thing is he just overextended with his army, right? He went up to the TC and started sieging with his muskets and his hussar, and I think that was honestly just a mistake. We can see the TC being repaired now, but it did take quite a bit of damage from those 2 falconets. Had he just sat back on top of the falconets, been reinforcing with dragoons, his 5 dragoon shipment came. He was building dragoons off the back of that. Certainly had plenty of anti-cavalry on its way, but to then just move your whole army forward and start sieging the town center felt like a very greedy move. Maybe he felt like, he could just win outright right there if he was able to take down the town center, not have Minutemen or a shipment pop into the fight, but not the case. Got punished for it quite hard. Kaiser taking a nice win. Despite that fact, military unit population still fairly close. French still ahead in economic unit population. So
yeah, especially after that raid. All of these dragoons sort of in the south of the map there did manage to pick up 3 vills gathering from the hunt near that trading post where I fled. So definitely, despite losing the cannons, is still moving around on the map, doing what he needs to do with his military units, with his dragoon mass there. I am a bit worried. Didn't get too many skirmishers out. I imagine, more anti-cavalry here because he was sending falconets. But so far, this is not hugely useful, I suppose, against what Blue has. He's not really going to be able to do any damage out of the raid there, and it was a nice raid. But now Blue are gathering up in this very safe area of the map. 2 town centers, a large army, garrison points absolutely everywhere, and a ton of hunts. At this point in the game, I think Blue has far more potential to boom and get ahead, but still, French is ahead of him for the time. But when you're up against an opponent with 3 town centers, you've got to be worried, right?
The clock is kind of ticking, yeah. But at the same time, there's not a ton of hunt out here. I mean, there's this decent pocket of hunt here, and if he can control this hunt, I mean, he's got another hunt up here. But French, still has a little bit more durability in his economy, and as a result of that, you got to look to continue to push the issue. You got to look to continue to use the mobility advantage that he's building up here with these dragoons. We can see Kaiser's got a fairly large amount of infantry, which is somewhat immobile, and maybe the dragoon advantage can balance out there for Phillnick a little bit. But like you've mentioned, really Portuguese starting to catch up, and this is the point, where we talked about getting through the scary stuff, getting through the 5 dragoons, getting through the 2 falconets, stabilizing enough to the point where you can start to catch up in economy. Yeah. Portuguese is getting very close to that position.
Yeah, and is setting up for the late game, right? We see his most recent shipment is Dragoon Combat, and that's going to persist for the rest of the game in a very meaningful way that stacks and stacks and scales in a way that, say, a unit shipment doesn't. French at this point in the game hasn't or isn't perhaps able to afford things like that. Does manage to get 1,000 wood out, and that's certainly going to help him in the short term, but Blue has already done that as well, and is just sitting here with his 3 town centers, building up a very nice economic lead. We see this that he's 1 villager ahead at this point, and when we check in moments to come, later on in the game, this is going to be so much more in Blue's favor if he's able to sustain building villages from 3 town centers here. Very, very safe, just sitting on top of these hunts, waiting for Yellow to do something, waiting for Yellow to come to him. Blue is in a position here where he just wants to sit around, gain resources, pump out units, defend as best he can, play defensively, play safe, doesn't need to risk anything, doesn't need to go out there and make him... He's not the one that needs to do something here. It's Yellow who needs to play reactively.
Yeah, and here comes the 2 Argon Guns. I wonder whether or not that'll be Kaiser moving out behind those 2. Yeah, it looks like he is going to move out. And I kind of like what you said. I almost wish he would have just sent another defensive shipment and just continued to sit back. He still actually has a decent amount of hunt. Just continue to get ahead. You've dealt with the difficult part, but at the same time, if you take a look at the military unit population, he's got a very good army here. Yeah. But like you said, I actually think he was primed to just kind of continue to sit back and...
But even with what I said, right, this is still not necessarily wrong to come out and take a TP, and at this point still not contested in any way. Might even just be able to bring that down, and even after this might just go back to his base.
Yeah. Oh.
Whoa! Hold the phone. That's a large number of falconets he's managed to. Oh my god, they're so bunched up. Cazador's getting shat on, and they have very low hit points as well. And there were some Minutemen mixed in there. I think got absolutely blasted. Organ Guns getting caught out of with their pants down there. The Dragoons getting in there to rushing in to defend them. The Falcon is doing so much work. Oh my goodness. MLG 360. Here we go. No, they do go fully. They're gonna get back now. Is he just going to push with his Dragoons? He's got the numbers to do it.
And he's got Dragoon combat as well.
Yeah, he does.
Really, at the same time, he's taking a ton of damage from the skirmishers. But he is killing a bunch of...
Yeah, and now he can just sit here and finish that off, right? Like now the Cazadors can just get it. Or, get the Dragoons out. Now the Cazadors can just poke in, use their range advantage. But now that the town center's down and he's sort of destroyed the one thing that was giving the French the ability to get back in it, all that siege potential, the ability to really push away these Cazadors, shut them down. Is Blue just going to go back and do what I mentioned? Just sit around, play defensively, maybe check out these resource pockets, not overcommit to anything aggressive, but certainly just, control the map the best he can with his army. He doesn't have to sit idle with it. Everything I said is still relevant.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I think he should start to get out on the map. Start checking places like this, right? Just control the map. That's what he's already done a pretty good job of doing. He's got TCs out on his half in a very nice spread, got very good vision of his side of the map. And yeah, now identifying the fact that his opponent is hunting down here, and it looks like everything going to get waypointed for both sides immediately down to the south coin mine.
Yep.
And that's going to be the next...
Jaegers do it right. That's exactly what he needs. Very, very strong unit, just in general, but certainly against the Dragoons here. Perhaps going to be the power spike he needs to take this fight.
Yeah, there is no cavalry units for the Portuguese guard at this point. Right?
So that 40% range resist is going to come into play very, very efficiently here. Yeah.
And there's not a great answer for them. And as we can see, Kaiser just going to have to go back, taking a lot of damage from those Jaegers. May need to... Does he have 2 stables out? Looks like he's only... No, okay, he does have 2 stables. I was going to say, he probably needs a good solid 10 or 15 Hussar to be able to push back out with this, because if you take a look, there are 3 Falconets and Jaegers out on the map here for the French player, which is very difficult to deal with only, Dragoon and a handful of Cazadors.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I wonder, I'd like to see those cavalry go in queue. I'm looking at the units in queue. No Hussars just yet, but if we take a look at Kaiserklein, very little food bank, and actually not particularly much food income either. So Hussar's going to be very premium if he does manage to get them out, and actually quite difficult to do. And that's the unit he really needs, right, to counter skirmishes and perhaps these falconets as well.
Yeah, it certainly needs them. We can see the Falconets creeping forward, going to be getting in the fight. Mamelukes, here they come.
That's a good way to get cavalry. Yeah. I've almost dismissed the point of having Mamelukes due to the nerf, but certainly this is where they're appropriate, and I'm glad to see them being used in a way where they need to, they are very appropriate, right? You need cavalry here, and that's exactly what they're providing. They're not being sent just because they're ridiculously strong. The Falconets are neutralized there, and now the Jaegers are actually quite vulnerable. We can see the yellow villagers getting involved, and I think Blue just has the power to just take the fight, even just fight the villagers, and that might be what he does, and just lock down the game. Look at that score, almost 100 points ahead of his opponent. And I'd be very interested to see what that is after the Mamelukes have been killed as well, which actually don't contribute to the score very much at all.
Yeah, and it looks like Kaiser's going to be able to beat this army back, and probably going to be able to take the game as a result. I had completely, just like you, I'd completely dismissed the fact that Mamelukes were even an option for him to make for a comeback, but certainly, obviously, a very good counter to the Jaegers, to the Falconets, and as a result, going to be able to push back this army with ease. Still has a very large population of Dragoons and Cazadors left alive, and now has complete control over the map to do whatever he wants after this. He can contest any of the remaining punts, and as a result, I think we'll probably see Phillnick cap out here.
Yeah, there's no way for him to gather resources, right? Where are the villagers at? Look at this one hunt that's just sitting around. There's 2 left in that herd, but Blue is so nearby that cannot be saved. Where are the other hunts? There's some up here. But just 2 villages, also very exposed, does have villages up there as well. Yeah, Blue, by the looks of it, being pulled back towards, rallying towards this outpost, maybe suspects there are people over there, but certainly has, the military units, the military count to just control every resource location on this map and shut down the game and win it from there.
Yeah, And I think Phillnick is coming to that conclusion himself. He's realized, that Kaiser even has an outpost out here. Is controlling that remaining hunt and coin mine as well. He's got, the TCs that we've mentioned before. He's got a TP still. He's in a position to be able to build another trading post. There's just not a ton of natural resources. Added on top of that fact, there's still a couple Mamelukes left alive.
Yeah.
Looks like the last one actually dropping down right now.
Cannon does get killed without any benefit. The other one is still okay, but yeah.
Yeah. Continuing to just kind of bleed away here at this point, and can't feel good. Does have an 8 skirmisher card coming out. For the time being, his military unit population is actually a little bit better than Kaiser's. And Kaiser actually has been, starting to transition to things like plantations. Actually has chopped wood for 2 plantations back in his base, which is actually hurting him quite heavily, slowing him down significantly. That being said, I don't think Phillnick has even started to consider making that transition.
Yeah.
There's no natural resources left on Phillnick's side of the map, and he doesn't have any. So.
Yeah, just 600 coin there, and then there's 2,000 coin, this unused coin mine, which Blue could arguably using, but yes, this is hurting him quite a lot, building all of these expensive late game buildings, but he is setting up for the long game, and that's nicer perhaps to do over a period of time rather than all at one moment. You suddenly find yourself without any kind of
I need 3,000 wood of infrastructure.
Yeah, and it's just not going to happen, right? He's not going to get caught with his pants down in a sense because he's slowly building this, and it kind of reminds me of an AOE 2 style where farms come out slowly and the transition just is like a slow and steady thing that actually just happens at a very set period in the game, and this is kind of reminiscent of that. We see preparing for the and I think in a very good. And 5 organ guns might just be it.
No.
Oh no! Oh baby, that was a triple.
Got a big volley off there.
That was actually more than a triple, but never mind.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Phillnick, he's going to have one more kind of like do or die fight up.
Cuirassy is coming out of nowhere though. Yeah, and it's not even good for the Dragoons to be in that location because they're going to get slammed by area damage. But yeah, looks like Phillnick, knows that overall there are plenty of Dragoons. Really, these cuirasses won't be standing for very long, and the organ guns are more than enough to deal with this other, this other half of the army on the other side of this Huron settlement, which is actually something we never got to talk about, the Huron settlement in the north and the south as well. But that does conclude game number 4, the score being 3-1 in Kaiserklein's favor. That was a really, really good game, and actually this series producing some really, really entertaining Age of Empires 3, and that's the kind of games that make me excited.
Yeah. And importantly, that game right up to the end was actually pretty close. Imagine if Phillnick at the 19-ish minute mark hadn't lost that many CDBs in that fight. Had he kept those alive a little bit longer, Kaiser ran out of food, like we were mentioning. It was making that tricky transition right up until the 19-minute mark. Very, very close. And once again, another 25-minute game that right up until the end is very close between these two players.
Yeah, I would love to have seen that just go on and, all of the natural resources be extinguished. And at that point in the game, we see that Kaiserklein is, set up for the late game. But I've heard you and other people as well mention, when there's no natural resources, like H2O and some of the explains videos has mentioned there's no point trading villages at a certain period in the game when there's just no natural resources left.
Yeah,
because it's more about controlling whatever might still be there with the military units. And
exactly. And I still have to throw it back to, I think, one of the greatest Smackdown games that we've ever cast.
The A's one versus
the A's versus Mito, French Mirror on Painted Desert.
Yeah.
Where there was a point like 30 minutes into the game or 35 minutes into the game where each side had 7 CDBs, like 2 plantations, and no military units, and that was it. Like, everything else was gone and erased off of the map.
The ending, though, I wish it had gone on, and it could have done as well, and that's the sad thing, I suppose. But I will put a link to that video in the description there. It is a 480p video, just to warn you before you go and watch that one after this. God, I wish it was better. That's the one where we had Steam for his, was it Game Blast?
Yeah.
Or something like that.
One of the,
some charity event. He was doing a 24-hour live stream, and Smackdown just happened to be happening during his 24-hour live stream back when we did it on the official channel. I'll leave a link down below, but that is the end of game number 4 Thank you very much for watching. We'll be right back in just a moment.
From my recollection about that game, by the way, Mito resigned, but only because I think he had like a false assumption of how many villagers A's had left, and after he looked at the post game, he was like, "Crap! Like this game was like completely even. Like I don't know why I resigned." It's one of those things where how many times do you look at your villager count at 35 minutes, see 7 CDB, and think, "Okay, I've got a chance to win the game. I've got a chance. I've got a chance." Like you just don't. You just don't, right?
Yeah, and he gave up because of that. Yeah, just an appropriate thing to do, but didn't realize he was still in it for sure. Where is this game I'm supposed to be joining?
But this is the deciding map, I guess, technically, or it could be the deciding map. And Kaiser Chief's going to be playing perhaps the British civilization. I don't know that I've ever seen Kaiser play Brits.
Yeah, I wouldn't actually know what his civilization pool is, but if you're mentioning he's not had perhaps as much experience with Brits, perhaps this is the comeback for Phillnick, where his more diverse civilization pool that you mentioned earlier could come into play in a series like this. Very, very interested to see what happens in this 5th game. The score currently 3 to Kaiserklein and 1 to Phillnick. It is match point, as you mentioned, but Phillnick by no means out just yet. We will see how this shapes up. British versus Dutch going into game number 5.
And Phillnick goes to the toilet.
Yeah. Anything interesting happening then? What's supposed to be going on, Zoo?
What's going on in my life right now? I'm trying to think. I've got a little vacation coming up here planned. I'm going back to God's country, Iowa.
God's country. I thought you resided in Iowa. Is that not the case?
So that's where I went to college. Right?
Oh, okay.
I lived in Minnesota. Like that's my home state, and that's where my family lives. And so like when I go home for Christmas and stuff, that's where I go.
Yeah.
But I'm going to a friend's wedding in Iowa in a couple of weeks, so that'll be fun.
How exciting! I always find things like that when I have to go and do something really quite annoying. Maybe we're just different people. I always find, I have to go somewhere annoying. I have to go to a wedding.
Ages. Like I haven't seen. Like they were some of my very good friends in college, and I haven't seen them in a long time.
I guess that's very different then. If they're actually people that you're. That's very, very different actually. But
it always helps when you're excited to see the people.
Absolutely. Actually, I'm going down to Devon for a week. I think actually, a friend of mine. Unfortunately, actually, she's very sick and she's in hospital. But she's actually going to be out soon, so that's really good. But I'm going to go visit her because haven't seen them in a while, so looking forward to that as well. But the game still 0 minutes. Oh no, it has just begun, so we can begin to talk about Age of Empires 3. Are you ready, Zuta? This is another similar looking map, but actually very different. The trading route now going down the center, which is a different dynamic entirely. And again, variety is something I like. I don't want to see that same trading post all the time. This one is perhaps the one I like a bit less, but I'm glad to see it. We have just seen a game on that previous style trading route. And this is a water map where we do have HC flags. Maybe that will impact the players' decisions to go water. Last game we saw neither player actually going water at all. And in this game that could well be the case as well. Let's take a look at their decks. Actually, we cannot look at their decks because they have not selected one yet. But this is perhaps we might see players go for water. Still certainly a possibility. But equally, as I just mentioned, perhaps not as well. Let's turn on Control-Shift-F and take a look at the map here. We do see 90 food for Kaiserklein. He's going to be pretty happy about that. Maybe he'll go for it. But there is a yellow explorer very, very nearby. And maybe what I just said will be the inverse. Maybe yellow will go for it, and then blue will be the one trying to steal it. No, he does go for it despite yellow being there. Perhaps a misclick. Perhaps now he's just going to let them all reset, I imagine that. And a 95 wood treasure as well. So all the good treasures in a very, very close area. And this is going to make for a very, very exciting Age 1, I think.
Yeah. And they've been spotted out by both players as well. That's the important thing. They both basically ran to the central portion of the map.
Here as well.
And both immediately saw all of the good treasures. And the Envoy's going to spot out this 90 food treasure as well. So, I mean, both players having seen all 3 of the arguably good treasures here on the map.
Yeah.
I guess there's a 60 wood down here, which is pretty good as well.
Yeah, look at that native scout coming in, and yes, there is a 60 wood treasure. This is a very nice map for treasures, but the native scout has arrived, and we know the sort of controversy surrounding that, the ability to snare your opponent here, and of course, yellow does have an envoy on top of that, versus the British, who only has the explorer, and that scout is a huge pickup, considering these really, really good treasures, right? That's going to give him exactly what he needs to really, really force British back to his base, and not give him the opportunity to really grab these treasures. had yellow taken a different scouting pattern, maybe blue could have grabbed this treasure. We certainly saw him trying to in the early portion, but then he let them all reset. But now yellow, I think, has free reign to do whatever he wants in this middle portion where the high quality treasures are.
Yeah, especially now that he's got two things to assist his explorer, right? So he's got the envoy that you just get for being Dutch, just a perk of being Dutch, and then now the native scout here as well. So certainly going to be able to leverage that into some control here. At the same time, it's maybe not enough to just blindly start these treasures. It's always a little hairy, starting to, as he goes on the 95 wood treasure, you still have that outlaw hitting you for a ton of damage. Even if you have two little helpers out on the middle of the map, it's still not a very comfortable thing to potentially be attacked by the British player. But looks like he's going to be okay. Kaiser's over here taking this big XP treasure against these two polar bears. And both players going to get a nice treasure as a result.
Yeah, and I don't know if Yellow's necessarily spotted that yet. Perhaps this envoy is, if he saw the Explorer, that would give Yellow much more free range to just start these treasures. As you mentioned, does pick up the 95 wood that treasure there, and that's one you're always pretty close to. 135 XP, pretty good. Something I'd like to point out is the sheep, though. This sheep over here was found by the envoy and was converted and then deleted, so nicely done. I just wanted to pick up on that, just make sure that didn't go unnoticed. But yeah, 135 XP is good, but not nearly as good as, say, 95 wood. That's so much more impactful, especially considering Dutch is a civilization that will really want to be using that in a meaningful way on, of course, the banks. And, is absolutely going to do that. Going to get him closer to that bank wood. Almost there, right? He's 350, almost there, then can reassign those villagers to other resources. And just going to go up a bit more smoothly, and has not gone for that 90 food and the other 90 food just yet, but they're still certainly available on the map. But at this point in the game, both players are heading up to the next stage. British here has got his market down. If we switch over to text being researched, I imagine already has hunting dogs, but we also see gang saw being researched as well, so going to improve the wood gather rate for the rest of the entire game, obviously. Yellow, on the other hand, as we mentioned, the bank going down there, and is now up with 400 wood.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see what he decides to do. Traditionally, this is a matchup where Dutch likes to age, just like they do every game. Brit has a little bit more difficulty in actually following them up and actually aging. So potentially likes to add a little bit of pressure, maybe with some sort of Rax play or something like that. So Dutch almost always going to start with...
Is he going to grab that scout before his own explorer goes down? Almost definitely. That is absolutely the case. And 100 extra HP to boot as well. Maybe can now even get home back towards his base. Not going to be the case, actually. Or is he going to... Yeah, we do see a sort of slightly forward Rex coming out.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the important thing to mention here. Looks like actually Phillnick going with a fairly slow, greedy build, opting to build the second bank with the 400 wood. So going to be sending 700 wood as his first card, almost certainly here in the second age, and using that to potentially maybe make a barracks now that he's, I believe, scouted the forward racks from Kaiser, but a little bit slower and a little bit more greedy economically, perhaps going to slow down his early game a little bit more. Certainly, if Kaiser plays back in his base, results in a stronger economy, but it looks like Kaiser is going to be playing aggressively, and wow, even a third bank coming down here. This is greed mode central for Phillnick, playing very greedy. Here comes the Rax finally.
Yeah, Rax notably being the last building. Yeah, the envoy does see the slightly forward Rax there, and if we switch over to units in queue, we will see pikemen arriving there, and I do wonder what his next shipment's going to be. Possibly 600 wood as well. What were you saying? It's clearly not an all-out another Rax coming down, so perhaps a sort of pike start there, and they're very, very strong, of course, against buildings. And what's he going to follow it up with?
Yeah, so I think the assumption that Kaiser was going with is he's going to play longbow pike. He's going to play a fairly economic version of longbow pike, right? He's used his 200 woods his 200 coin from the governor age upright to get his steel traps research, stuff like that. Yeah. Still going to be playing very economically himself, and just wants to go with a big timing push with a big, massive expo pike.
I see. So pike. Not anything early. These 5 pikes, came out. They're not going to walk in here and start sieging down a bank. Obviously, they're not really going to get very much work done. Might get more work done against a house, but even, certainly these 5 skirmishers now out, and if you're sieging that Rex, unless you're very on point with when those skirms are going to be trained and you start getting out of there like 5 seconds early before they even arrive, you're going to lose perhaps 1, 2, even 3 pikemen doing that. So not going to be doing that. Going to stack up his units here. 15 longbowmen have joined. And I like the idea of training the pikes first, right? That protects you against any sort of cavalry, because which the longbowmen will be vulnerable here. Does use them to pick up the 90 food treasure, that coming into play at this point in the game. But here, yellow does see the units blue has been training, is just going to make sure that that is absolutely the case. And as a result, does lose the explorer, but now has the information of longbow pike being the thing that blue is doing.
Yeah, and immediately throwing down a stable. Looks like he's decided that, yes, my opponent is playing, something that's fairly aggressive here, does have a decent number of units, is going to be pushing into me. I'm going to have to play this out a little bit longer in the second age. A fifth bank coming down, but at the cost of having a fairly low number of military units and having a very late stable as well. So Kaiser going to have at least some time here where he's going to have a very large military unit population advantage, and we'll see whether or not he can leverage that into any sort of aggression. He does get one villager there.
He does get a villager there, and yes, stable is quite late, but something to his merit is the sheep, right? I don't think blue has got any sheep. Oh, he's got 2 there, and maybe he's eaten some as well. Certainly one in the back did decay away, but the sheep are definitely going to be useful for getting out a burst of military units in a pinch, and that might be obviously what he needs to do, considering the greediness of the early banks, and certainly the sort of the more aggressive British start here, consisting of longbowmen and pikemen. That's a pretty large British army at this point in the game. I'm going to bring up the graphs now so we can take a look at that. And blue definitely sort of leading the game in terms of military unit population, and I'd like to see him do something with that. But again, when the villagers are all quite protected in the back, can be difficult. Did manage to pick up 1 villager, as you mentioned, and now he's going to come back in. Maybe he can pick up another, and maybe he can do some lasting damage to his opponent.
Yeah, but this is still kind of scary for Phillnick, right? Because usually you rely on your skirms behind this wall to be very strong. Camp flanking from the bottom. Pikes should be able to deal with that.
Yep.
But usually you rely on the structure of the wall out front to be able to defend your stuff, right? And against British and longbows particularly, you're actually on the outside looking in with your wall, right? I mean, the longbows outrange you. They can just shoot over the wall. Yeah. They don't really give a damn about your wall. They just continue to volley over top of it. So,
wall, Ellie giggle.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a tenuous situation here for Phillnick. He is at some point going to start running out of hunts. If you take a look at, this hunt here is kind of jammed around this native post. Not going to be the easiest thing to get back into a super safe position. Once these hunts do start running out for him as well, I mean, hunts 4 or 5 start to get out here in the middle portion of the map, and that's the portion of the map that Brit is going to look to contest. And if he can keep Dutch from aging before that point, and can keep Dutch back in his base, keep him contained, and force him to come out and fight on top of these hunts when he's got just maybe a massive military population advantage, that's what Brit's realistically going to be looking.
Especially if he can stop the age up, and stop that from ever happening. Certainly something. Yeah, but here, yellow. It looks like yellow is going to come out a bit. Does have a sizable number of cavalry, and I'd like to wonder how efficient or how impactful they'll be versus the longbowmen. Certainly there are pikes here, and they're very efficient, very good at fighting away the cavalry, but a large number of skirmishers as well, and these certainly will be able to pick off the pikes, and that might be exactly what he looks to do when this fight gets started. Cav of his own are going to join the fray, and you can see here, the cavalry not fully committing, the yellow ones that is, and you can see the pikes because of that are going to get back there. They don't want to be picked off, and only these pikes will come forward when the cav come forwards, and it's who can control your units better there. It's a little dance that I like to mention, but yellow can't commit too heavily. He can't stand around. He has to commit or not commit, obviously, because longbowmen, as we know, have a huge amount of range, and walking in and out is not really a feasible thing to do, and skirmish is usually quite good at that, but against longbowmen, perhaps not so much.
Yeah, interesting card out of Kaiserklein. There's 6 longbows coming as his next card, which makes me wonder whether or not he just wants to get maybe 5 more cav and then play aggressively behind this, but I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that. And Dutch has played a very safe early game. We can see it's going to be very difficult to push him to the front here anytime soon. And even to the north side here, he's kind of got a little bit of a building wall going out to the north side of his base with these 2 banks and the racks. I would have liked to just seen him continue to play for the mid game. Maybe if he's got something like Cav HP in his deck, that would be a time to send it. Continue to mass cavalry. Just keep the pressure up front. Don't look for big engagements until your opponent comes out where you can engage him, and then maybe have a card advantage with some sort of mid game spike. But looks like 6 longbow is going to be the choice for him there. and I wonder if that's going to come back to bite him.
Yeah, Longbowman, obviously, the more aggressive card, something more impactful in the early portion is going to, as a sort of opportunity cost, isn't going to have sort of that upgrade that is more persistent and scales with the rest of the game. As you mentioned, he's not going to have that. And I'd like to see what he does with it. Perhaps he will be able to make something happen earlier as a result of that. Doesn't look like it's going to be the case, actually. But, yeah, that's a very interesting point to bring up on. And shipments, again, just coming back to a very interesting part of Age of Empires 3. But Yellow here, is he going to be able to get up for the time being? I don't think that's his intention at all. More cavalry coming out, and Hero stuck, apparently. In the town centre there, isn't able to get that out, so that's a shame. But, yeah, Yellow looks like he is going to be starting to push out here, and maybe these 6 longbowmen will be good because of that.
Yeah, they could be. And he does. I did do a quick check. He doesn't have Cav HP in his deck.
Yeah,
he has both the musket cards instead. So
could just be a deck selection thing, and thought, oh well, what do I even send here? I don't have the card I want to send, and just send 6 longbowmen because of that. But the fight is well underway here. The cavalry are coming forward, and as a result of that, we do see the pikemen trying to get involved, but they are a little bit stuck. And they might get, picked off by the skirmishers there. That's a lot of cavalry, and the longbowman could be threatened by that. At the moment, though, the cav are not up against the longbowman and using his own cav, his musketeers, and of course, all as sort of pseudo anti-cav blocking this here. And I think actually Blue in a good in a good spot, at least until
he's in a great spot.
Yeah, at least until those units run out. But it should be able to deal with all the cav before that.
Yeah, and this is the point where you just stand and fight with longbows. Longbows, don't touch them, don't let them move. And I think Kaiser realized it. Just let them fight. They're very strong, and they're allowed to just stand and fight. 6 muskets coming in from the side, and honestly, this is maybe going to get a little tricky here for Kaiser. He doesn't have a ton of cav reinforcements, and I think that's going to be perhaps the difficult thing for him here. Does he have any sort of reinforcing cav? So it looks like for the time being, the answer is no. Now here come 5 cavalry, but they may be just a little bit too late to this fight.
Yeah, 5 cav going to join the fray, and certainly if you had them earlier, the longbowmen would have been way more effective because the skirms would have been preoccupied with a bunch of cav to try and kite back away from, and that's always awkward when you have this exact counter towards it. Certainly would have been more favourable in that fight here. Cav, either way, they now have to join the fight, and are going to be effective here as well. But yeah, as you mentioned.
Yeah, they got them actually in a really good spot. It looked like Phillnick wanted to swing his cavalry around to get into some sort of raid. Now with the muskets and the cav all up in front, plus the longbow standing kind of back in the trees, really good turnaround fight there for Kaiser. Going to be able to clean this up, and his economy behind this is very good. Just another big batch of musketeers coming back. Must have more cavalry units here coming fairly soon. Plus the remaining longbow DPS from the back. Looks like Brit's going to be okay, and this is the point that I wanted to see, and why I was suggesting perhaps having a card like Cavalry HP would be very beneficial, because this kind of long extended fight where if you take a look at Phillnick's resources, he's basically out of resources. Soon he's going to have to come out and challenge this kind of a position, and ideally Phillnick was hoping to get out of his base with that push so that he could secure those resources. Unfortunately, not the case. It looks like Kaiser going to keep him back in his base. Now it's going to be kind of difficult for the Dutch player to get out of his base to get the food to really remass and deal with the British economy.
Yeah, did have a force and did push British back, but sort of dwindled out halfway across the map, and as we saw, British bounce back with reinforcements there, plus 6 muskets coming out of the tower, and all adding up, and actually does push back. And now Blue still not in a position of his own to really push into the yellow player's base, doesn't have the forces to do that, but certainly can control these hunts, which is the important thing that you mentioned, especially since he's literally about to run out. Just 250 left in that. Just pick up a 90 food treasure, Kaiserklein. Picking up treasures at this point in the game still worth doing. Not as impactful as they are early on. But yes, Yellow is about to start pushing out, he's going to have to start gathering elsewhere, rather. It is only the hunts he needs to be concerned about, because those coin, he does have a large supply of that just being generated out of nowhere from the banks, and that's actually an interesting part of the game. Here, 2 Vels do arrive. Okay, so maybe he can now control the coastal hunts with the 2 caravels.
Yeah, and importantly, I just saw a huge chunk of resources drop for Phillnick, which means one thing. Aging up.
That's absolutely true. The Exiled Prince is in queue for Phillnick here, and the question is, will he be able to sneak up to the next age, or will he be punished for that? He has no resources left. He does have the caravels,
Yeah, and look at the military unit population. That's the important thing, right? That's the difference. And the second that Kaiser sees that age up, I will not be surprised at all to see him just right-click underneath the town center of Phillnick, because Phillnick needs time to get the age up in, get probably an upgrade on his cavalry, and start to get cards like 8 Skirm.
There it is, right?
9 Reuter, stuff like that. Yeah, and here they go. Here comes the Great March across the middle of the map. Yeah. And we're going to see the defining fight right here, I think.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. We're going to see that happen. I do like to wonder if, going up was the correct thing to do. And I think, there's this argument I like to bring up sometimes where, aging is dangerous. Obviously, that's, dangerous. You know your opponent's going to come right after you as soon as he sees you hitting up to the next age. But are you just going to stay in the colonial age as Dutch forever? I think, Fortress Age really is where they want to be, and you already know you're behind. Perhaps you have to take those risks and just get up to the next age and hope it works out, otherwise you'll just slowly lose. Whereas this gives you the option to perhaps lose very quickly, or actually win, actually maybe have a chance of winning.
Yeah, but this is still going to be kind of a tricky fight. There's a lot of cavalry units for Phillnick here. He's got the Hussar off to the right, he's got the Skirms and the Reuters off to the north. And it's kind of difficult actually for him to get back into his base. Does get a nice pick there, killing quite a few Hussars. They were reinforcing in.
Look how focused he is on that town center as well. Just wants to bring that down. That's, I believe, the only resource spawn point aside from this tower over here. But that tower is very, very far away. And of course, the shipment is not going to arrive now as a result of that. And just a great building to take out, I suppose.
Yeah, especially when he's got all the siege potential that he has with the muskets. Honestly, I think he should just sit here in this middle and start sieging all these houses down as well.
Yeah. What do you think is the most? This is a very, for me, I'd be like, oh, I'm spoiled for choice. What do I destroy? Do I destroy the banks? They're generating him resources right now. Or do I destroy the population, the houses? He needs that to train units. Do I destroy the infrastructure because, now he can't make any more units and defend his base? What do you even kill?
The houses are always the safe option because they're so low hit points and to provide you with the crucial ability to actually just train stuff. They're always like the easy de facto defaults to this choice.
But I like to wonder how impactful killing houses is immediately because, of course, you've done a lot of damage, killed a lot of units here, and certainly now he's going to run out of units very, very quickly, I would imagine. Is he blocking off the sort of... if I was yellow here, maybe I'd be tempted to put my units in the caravel and sail away to safety as opposed to losing all the units in this location. But I think blue, decisively winning the game in this location. I'm sure we'll see GG come out from yellow any moment now.
Yeah, and the longbows weren't even in the fight. They were just spectating from this coin mine here in the back. So, 12 Swiss pike did come out for Phillnick, but like you mentioned, the only place to ship them was to this bottom outpost. So, kind of in an awkward location. I would love to just see Kaiser go back and just stand in the base and start to siege the architecture. He knows that he's just killed basically the entire army. You don't even really need to find the villagers because a bunch of the economy of the Dutch players invested in these banks, like we've been mentioning. So you can just siege those down, get some raids in with your cavalry, and slow roll the game from there.
And you can search for the cavalry, for the villagers whilst you're sieging that. Leave the muskets here to do all the dirty work and send a couple of cav out to look for villagers. And even just taking down the houses, as you mentioned, he's going to run out of population at some point, and then those villagers will actually have to start taking time to gather wood to rebuild them, and then that's slow, and they'll never get the resources to train more units, and then you just win the game from there. But the score actually surprisingly even, despite what has happened. I still think blue obviously in the lead here. Actually has a sizable mass of Reuters. And this is exactly the best units to train. Something that's very mobile, can cause problems for your opponent, and are actually quite tough for British to deal with at this point because these are never going to stay in one place. Certainly, Longbowmen are very good against Reuters, but he's not actually going to be there to fight them. Musket's very slow as well, and cavalry, of course, yes, they're more mobile, but not very good against Reuters. So I like the Reuter mass here. He's just going to run around, try and run the British player ragged. But this goes back to what you said earlier. Perhaps it is just good for blue to just go sit in his opponent's base and then force the Reuters to come to him.
Yeah, and Kaiser with a little bit of indecision here. He did nicely pick off the Swiss pikes, but now he's been fairly indecisive with his army for the past 2 minutes. I think he should have taken all of his infantry, just sat here, started killing banks, started killing stables, killing houses. There's tons of value you could have gotten just by keeping all of that infantry balled up. Make the Reuters come to you, and when they come to you, the muskets just keep sieging, the longbows turn and fight. That being said, he is aged up, or he's in the process of aging, of course. Doesn't have the fast-aged politician, so won't have it immediately, but It does have, a fairly good economy still behind this, 70 economic, which is certainly very, very strong.
Yep.
And as a result, should be able to deal with this and close the game out. Phillnick not making things easy, still running around with these warriors, very large warrior mass like you mentioned, and is definitely going to make Kaiser earn this best extent.
Yeah, definitely going to earn this win, and could even just pick up these 5 cav here, and just picked up a few villagers here, trying to catch the Reuters off. The muskets in a very nice, actually in hand combat. That's really good for the muskets. That's exactly where they want to be. A big mass of muskets, forcing the yellow to walk through the hand combat muskets. He's already sort of being engaged by to get away from this. Does have a number of falconets. Wow, did manage, obviously floating a lot of coin, I imagine, due to all the banks. Does manage to get them out, and this is really good for him. But did lose a number of Reuters, sadly. For him, as he was sort of walking away, trying to get to the falconets there. I'd like to wonder, how much better his chances were if that had not happened. But still, actually, yet not making things difficult, and still in this game, actually, because, his opponents only just got up to the fortress age. You always say that, right? He's slowed down to do that. Still has a sizable military mass, but now he's staring his opponent in the face who has four falconets. Actually, 5 falconets, and
he's got
a very large
infantry. Mass. Yeah, and he's got a ton of infantry, right?
Look at this, 400 wood as well at this this tower. If blue loses this location, he's going to get even further behind. It's an 800 wood swing.
Yep. Phillnick still definitely not out of this game. I think some of Kaiser's indecision here. He's realistically just been running his units back and forth north and south. Does have a whole slew of techs coming in though. He's going to have the veterancy upgrades for his longbow, husk, and musketeer all finishing at the same time.
Ooh, the longbows, they're being a bit greedy, trying to get some volleys on the Reuters, and there does not take too many falconet shots to the face, but certainly a bit extended there. The indecision, just coming back to that, go ahead.
Yeah, the indecision perhaps going to be costing him. 2 falconets are out for Kaiser though. His upgrades are almost finished.
Yep.
They're just finishing now.
Yep.
And I think this is the point where he just wants to fight. There's so many falconets.
Yeah,
here.
So many muskets just went down in that small area. He just needs to get back a little. So really, Phillnick capitalizing on the forwardness of those units there, and does manage to pick up quite a number of kills. So that's really, really good for him there. Let's take a look at units in queue. I'd like to wonder, you said he's got 2 falconets of his own, and I imagine that's the home city shipment. Yeah, it is. I can see that now. But maybe even culverins will be something he'd be tempted to make. Interesting. We'll see what happens. More falconets joining the fray from the yellow player here, and he's really starting to push towards his opponent. If he finds this location, Zuta, that could be a huge victory for yellow. That could be exactly where he needs to be.
Oh my god, there are so many falconets here.
Yeah. Oh, baby, a triple.
There are so many falconets.
Wow. And he's just going to stand there and just take it like a little bitch. It's not looking good for him.
I don't know what else he can do though. He's got to fight, and he's trying to get in a position. He's got more hussar flanking from the side. He's just gonna ram all of his muskets into the front side as well.
Yeah, and just try committed to taking on the Falcons, and that's an all or nothing decision. Once you decide to do that, you don't go back. Does manage to pick up all the Falcons, but has sort of lost all of his standing army there. This might be a good thing for the British player, though, because he has the late game sort of food income being set up in this south location. But that's exactly where the Reuters are heading. If he finds that, maybe he can really, really harass this. And he does find that. Longbowman does have those to sort of defend here. But at this present point in the game, Yellow, I think, has the larger military mass to confront this location. And that's what's important right now.
Yeah, and he is going to pick off a couple villagers. Does, I think, wisely back away from the longbows. The longbows just deal out an insane amount of damage very quickly to the Reuters, so he doesn't want to stand and fight those for too long. But Phillnick has reestablished the middle portion of the map. He's gotten back control of some of this remaining hunt, and Kaiser now, over on Mills, things are starting to get up a little bit ugly for him. But at the same time, take a look at the upgrades that Kaiser's been sending all of this time. He's got Team Musket attack, Musketeer Grenadier damage, Team Musketeer Grenadier combat, and Yeoman sent all on his units right now. He's dealt with the very scary part of the artillery foundry. In fact, he took water over here on the side and killed the artillery foundry as an artifact of that, which is actually quite important because now his infantry doesn't have nearly of good of an answer for Phillnick. So going to be a little bit awkward there as well. And I think he can just mass longbows and muskets here and know that if he stands on top of his hunts later in the game, he's probably going to be okay.
Yeah, and this has been a really, actually... Well, I'd like to say close game, but that's not actually true, but due to the score difference, and still a score difference, blue in favour. But if you look at what's actually happening on the map, that's a very large army of Reuters with some hussars to back it up. They're standing right on top of, or very close at least, to that blue player's economy. But you mentioned that all of those late game upgrades, and blue certainly getting ready for that. But will they be able to be relevant in the future?
Yeah, I don't know.
Considering,
I don't know.
yeah.
Losing so many units to this raid right here, or to this fight right here.
Yeah, those hussars doing so much work.
I think Kaiser's lost. His economy is too spread out.
Yeah. And these mills been shut down as well. Like you can't just abandon over 1,200 wood worth of gathering facility. That's now shut down, and like where are they going to go? They're going to go back somewhere to gather some other resource that isn't food, and that's the one that he's actually currently lacking, or will be lacking very soon. Does have 2 more mills up here that are functioning right now, but a bunch of yellow units have turned up just to sit on top of them, and this goes back to an age-old thing. Whoever switches to the mills and plantations first usually starts to end up losing, especially, well, in an evenly matched game, that is. And I think Phillnick done an absolutely phenomenal job of getting back into it. Getting back and remaining competitive despite that early loss there. I do wonder how different this game would have been if he'd sat in the base and started destroying units, and I'm tempted to say it would have been different, but how different, I'm not sure. Phillnick done a really great job here. Yeah,
Phillnick has played really brilliantly from this point forward, and this is going to be very hard, I think, for Kaiser to win from here. Look at Phillnick's bank, actually. Like, if he spends that bank, well, he just did spend a whole bunch of it. If he continues to spend that bank, it's going to be even more difficult for Kaiser. Because right now, Kaiser's having a really difficult time staying ahead in the economic unit population. And the economic unit population that he does have is spending a lot of time gathering wood and building mills, which is not what he wants to be doing with his resources. In fact, he's constructed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mills total this game, which is very painful.
That's very, very painful. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But I do wonder how the lack of mills and plantations is going to affect Phillnick. Of course, he still has access to natural resources, so perhaps not very much at the time being. You mentioned the bank he had being spent, and I do see a church here, and I believe that means only one thing, right? You'll only be building a church for those upgrades that you can get out of, well, not the upgrade, what am I even trying to say? The religious freedom, War Galders, and they're going to, just add more power to his army. Look how large that is. In terms of population, it's quite even, but I think in terms of what is actually present here, especially with the War Galders, this could be the point in the game where he shuts down the British player.
Yeah, Kaiser has been trying to get out a decent number of dragoons. Does have the Cab Combat card has been sent, but at the same time, it's just an overwhelmingly large mass of cavalry units here, and this is going to be really difficult to deal with for Kaiser once again.
Yeah, decisively ahead in terms of military population. I think I was looking at the wrong bar in my previous comments, but just is going to sit on top of these mills. Fortunately, there is a caravel and a frigate for the blue player. He can control the coastline, but that's not, if he shells just offshore, but that's not going to cover the rest of the map. I do wonder if the best place for his mills was on the coastline. And that's an interesting thing, actually. Maybe I do wonder if maybe you put them on the islands. I've seen that happen. It's very awkward when you want to build a mill. You usually just want to do it wherever your villagers are, and that's usually often the appropriate thing to do anyway. But yellow just running him ragged now. The tide is really, really shifted, and yellow is the person controlling the game now.
Yeah, I mean, this is completely in Phillnick's favor at this point. Still, the military unit population 86 to 34. Kaiser trying to get back out on the map, but it's going to be a long ways to go. Maybe if these longbows can sit here and get just insane trades against some of these riders, he'll be okay. But I don't know. There's just so many reinforcements. There's got to be a third stable up. Yeah, there's 3 stables up producing riders at this point. It's just so many riders.
Yeah. Just more of the same, right? Just fighting in obvious spots here. Standing next to the Raxes, new units popping out can be killed here. Maybe even start sieging the Raxes there, and remaining obviously quite close to the mills to prevent any villagers from using them. I'm surprised he's not took more of an eye on this, and I'm surprised that Blue's not gathering here, either. This is still a functioning facility, but yeah, just more of the same, trying to control this area. Blue actually does have, a number of Dragoons, and as you mentioned, the Longbow's adding in some extra damage as well. Is able to push Yellow back for the time being.
Yeah, Kaiser actually pushing them back quite nicely. Phillnick hesitant to get too close to these Raxes because they are supported by the frigate and the caravel from Interjection as well. True. So, but at the same time, improving his composition, starting to add in a whole ton of skirmishers here now. But at the same time, Kaiser, we have to go back. He's got a ton of upgrades sent. He's got all of those musket upgrades. He's got cav combat sent. He's got yeomen. Longbows are really, really good if he can get up a critical mass of them in this situation. So this game is still very, very close. If you take a look at the scores, 302 to 297. Yep. I mean, we're basically even at this point, so still very close. And I think the Longbow, if they can get into a good position here with all the range they represent, a lot of damage is going to be given and taken as a result of trying to get into a position to deal with them. And there's no cav here at this point, so the Longbow's going to be very efficient at dealing with a bunch of these units.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I believe they have the same range as it, or just slightly less than a Falcon. No, I think it is the same range as a Falconet now that Yeoman has arrived. They're actually ridiculous. But here, Yellow adding in more units, and I think, he had in that fight his skirms against his opponent's Dragoons, which is exactly what he wants. And then, well, I suppose the Longbowmen were fighting the Reuters, which is not really what he wants. Perhaps, but yeah, just the shit. Oh, more Longbowmen do arrive, and again, we do have that coastal defense that you were mentioning. Doesn't want to get too close to that. And for the time being, this is a very defendable location for Blue. More Yellow units joining, but again, he can't get too close. So there's an outpost there, there's frigates there, and yeah.
If he gets too close, right, especially, he starts getting in the range of that frigate, that's not what he wants to do. And at the same time, the other awkward thing that I want to point out for the Dutch player here is he's just walking in full vision on top of all of these manners 24/7. So Kaiser always gets to see exactly what units he's been training, exactly what his composition looks like. And you can't exactly just start sieging those down, right? Because then the British player just continues to make more and more and more villages.
That's true. It's true. And Yellow actually doing, adding in a trading route now by the looks of it, and I think at this point in the game, absolutely something can do. Fairly stalemated, the fighting that is happening. Needs to pay attention to that, of course, but I think the route is something that's been neglected this entire game, and certainly going to add that in for some extra resources and just an extra advantage here. The fight in and of itself, though, Yellow actually coming out on top most of the time, but Yellow still not able to get too close. But maybe that'll change. 3 racks, I imagine we're going to see 15 Longbowmen or something like that pop out any moment now as well. Let's take a look at units in queue. Yeah, that's absolutely the case. We're going to see that any second now. And just bouncing back and forth in this location. And, yeah, let's go back. Blue has mills. Does Yellow? He does now. Yep. Yeah,
he's got to at this point, and he's maxed out on banks too. So Dutch's economic unit population not going to be getting any better. Actually, let's take a look at the economic units. 50 villagers and 8 banks. So he is not going to be improving his economy whatsoever. It stays still right here. I mean, he can retrain that villager that he just lost, but aside from that, it gets no better. And well, here comes a huge reinforcement of Hussar. I was expecting this a little bit earlier, but now this is going to be difficult.
This is like wave after wave of like assault, but this might be the final blow, right? That's a lot of cav, and they're very, very good against the Longbowmen, and that's going to give all of the other units that providing supporting fire. I think he can take this location now, and if he does, I think that's the defining point where he wins the game.
Yeah, and he's just killed the whole army. And now at this point, he can... Oh, wow, I actually didn't see that Kaiser had saved that many Longbows in that caravel. I thought he had actually lost them.
You thought they died in the fight? Yeah, actually, this is what I like. I like seeing the garrison. These are like town centers, but for military units now. That's interesting. The whole dynamic of the game would be changed in a way so, like, this game would not be the same if you could garrison military units in town centers and outposts. The game would be so different. It wouldn't be like I'm tempted to say almost unrecognizable, but in a way that the frigates and stuff, providing him the facility to garrison military units, and that's actually an interesting facet of the
Yeah. It looks like Phillnick has just made the decision that he was going to try and siege down the town center, taking a lot of damage from the Minutemen. Longbow continuing to add in more DPS here as well, but at the same time starting to split off and get some little raids in there. And I think, well, I mean, we keep saying it, but it seems like now Kaiser is just continually hanging on by, just a little tiny bit. But at the same time, another big reinforcing batch of cav coming in to fill up.
Wave number 4. Here we go. Yeah, and that's it. Yeah. GG lag, he says. But yeah, I didn't know if, like, when I was mentioning, this is where he's gonna straight up win the game here. Did he lose the longbowman, or were they just some other kind of longbowman that they were managed to put in the boat? Or did they not die? Did they just get in the boat? I'm not sure.
He must have just gotten them in the boat.
I see. Yeah, but at this point does not have the the utility to do that. The boats are not in the land at all. More cav arrive, and after that there's going to be another wave of cav, and there's only so many waves I've been saying that he can perhaps withstand here. And that is the end of the game. Phillnick does take game number 5, bringing the score up to 3-2 now. So this series really warming up.
Yeah.
And perhaps he can take another off Kaiserklein, and then we'll see a 3-3 next game decides. That would be interesting, a full best of 7, but not the case right now. Still 1 point away from Kaiserklein. Does lose this game, but can still go into the next one knowing that he has some room to lose another one before he really needs to be concerned about having this series taken away from him. But yeah, Kaiserklein's still in a good spot for the series, but this game is taken off him. It's not a sweep in his favor, not a 4-1 sweep. Phillnick definitely very competent in showing us that here.
Yeah, and that game was so close. Like there was a period of time where I'm like, okay, Kaiser, he can't lose this. He's won. Like it seemed like he'd won, and then there was some indecision. Phillnick got aged up, started running him around the map, and it felt like he was dead in the water, and then somehow got out a miracle number of falconets, got out some great volleys with those. Even things up, and then it was in Kaiser's boat to try and survive, and he survived for much longer than I think a lot of than I certainly expected, and resulted in a really fantastic game. Really, all of these games have been really good. I think we've had 5 20-minute games, like just really good games.
I absolutely agree. Yeah, absolutely. And this one particularly good. Very, very long game, 35 minutes. Quite interesting to see. And I think something that surprised me, let's take a look at the all resources gathered. That just shows how close this game was, right? You can see that it's actually very even, and yellow, despite being ahead in the early portion, despite being behind in the early portion, is still actually very competitive and slightly ahead of blue in terms of the number of resources they have relative to each other. But that is game number 6. Or 5, honestly, actually. We're going into game number 6 just coming up. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to game number 6 in this best of 7 series. Will we see all 7? That is the question. Or will Kaiserklein take the series in this game here? Just lost the last one, so clearly Phillnick has a lot left in him. Certainly very good. But is still 1 point away from taking the series. The score is currently 3-2 in favour of Kaiserklein. Let's start with him in the north of the map. The north left of the map, as I would like to say. Indeed. Spawning with 2 silver mines there. I like this map. I like some of the maps, as you've been mentioning, Guy always likes to put 2 mines, but going back to sort of 1 mine or some of them. This map, however, a 2-mine map, but I'd like to give a shout out. We didn't do it earlier to who was the other person responsible for the majority of the maps? His name I have a hard time pronouncing.
What's his name?
Rikikipu, that's it. Yeah, that's why I have a hard time saying it. There he is. So I'm not necessarily sure if this is a Gaia map or a Rikikipu map.
Yeah, I don't honestly know either.
Yeah, perhaps the chat will tell us. We will find out. But either way, some new maps here. This one we did actually showcase already, I believe, in previous. Yeah, this is the one with the XP crate in the middle of the bottom of the thing, which.
We've discussed whether or
tantalizingly down there. Either way,
whether or not we think we could get down there somehow.
Well, look at the shadows on those birds as well. Actually, like is that physics engine? I'm not sure what's going on there. Shadows, at least, are working out on the elevation. Age of Empires 3 is so ahead of its time for 2005. I don't know, that just struck me. I don't know why it did. It shouldn't have done. It's just shadows. But yeah, tantalizingly an XP crate, and I think the key feature of this map to point out is, of course, the 2 trading routes. It's not a singular route, it's 2 separate routes. And that's been I think this might be a Rikikipu map, actually. Just based on that, I think he is, yeah. But yeah, I really like that dynamic where, you know, you can't just invest in the route as easily. You can invest in your side, but that does not upgrade the other side, which you might also want to take if you have like control of the middle of the map. But also adds, like, you know, you can control yours perhaps more easily, and it's safer to upgrade that side. And, you know, I think that's more interesting to have them separate in a way. But yes, we do have, as I mentioned, Kaiserklein in the north of the map, north left, playing as indeed the British, laying down, of course, his market. Hunting dogs coming in. Yeah, for both players actually. But yes, in the south of the map there, we do have Phillnick playing French. So this matchup, definitely one of my favorites.
Yep, and I think we say it every single time that we see this matchup on SmackDown. That if you were introducing someone to Age of Empires 3 and you were going to show them like the mechanics of the game and kind of explain to them, you know, the macro decisions that players need to make about like booming and playing aggressive and the benefits of aging and how good shipments are and stuff like that in the third age, this is like the quintessential matchup. You would show them and be like, this is why aging is good, and this is why aging is dangerous, and this is why, you know, playing really economically intensive can be very good. It's just basically an open book. Anything can happen, and to even try and predict immediately what's going to happen can be difficult, actually.
Yeah, it can be. And yeah, I like the matchup just based on, I mean, for everything you've said, and again, I say this all the time, what do we... That's a lot of villages. Very cool. Zuta, the box theorem is off the charts right now. In fact, it's so off the charts, it's quite bad. For that one villager, at least.
His box level is...
over 9,000.
It's over 9,000.
Yep. Yep. He's going to hurt this other herd that this villager has identified was not working. Sometimes it can like just stand there and appear to be working, doesn't appear to be idle, or is not like an idle villager in the sense that it shows in the UI. And you do have to notice those sometimes. It's actually, you know, but both players now heading up to the next age. And I'm going to finish the point I was making, which was, you know, I like this matchup because one civ's defined as the sort of defensy, can you hold civ, and the other is the aggressive, can you penetrate civ. And I really like that dynamic. But we did lose a lot of age 1 time talking about that and seeing who really got the advantage and really what happened there. And I think, you know, that's important to cover age 1. And we, you know, did that. I think, yeah, but let's take a look. We do see Settler Treasure coming out for Kaiserklein. That's really, really good for him. Also picks up 95 wood as well. Going to be very, very happy with that. But Phillnick, by no means behind. Lots of food. Going to help age his age up, and a bit of coin there for the hunting dog. Certainly made that more easy.
Yep, got some nice treasures for both sides. Looks like it was fairly even. And Phillnick going to be building his trading post as he does transition to the colonial age. Pretty standard stuff here out of both players so far. Nothing A's level of craziness. We don't have any sort of Virginia Company build or anything like that. So it looks like both players playing very, very standard. Phillnick adding in his market this time, interestingly enough, with French civilization. And we'll see whether or not that puts him in a good spot. But everything looking pretty standard. Of course, on to Brits to decide whether or not this is going to be an aggressively paced game or maybe a little bit more economic, macro, boomy paced game. So we'll see what happens. I have a feeling it's going to be aggressive, though.
2 forward villages, contrary to what I was saying earlier. Actually, not as defensive as one would appear, but still certainly the civilization that has perhaps more booming potential. But yes, a forward Rax coming down, supported with an outpost to defend it as well. Is scouted by Phillnick with his explorer, and you know is going to know that that is the thing that's happening in the middle of the map there, and will be able to react accordingly. Still, going to start with the stable and the 2 houses, which you know he's going to build out of his 400 wood. That's the important thing there. But what and a Rax coming down as well. And okay, actually, not going to be going for the houses. So here going to be going for the Rax stable Samwise style build. Yeah, and that's you know the appropriate thing to do against this sort of more aggressive style.
Yeah, and this is where Samwise build really kind of shines, right? Against a single rack, still fairly economic opening from Kaiserklein. He's going to be able to potentially get out 5 cav, 5 musket, and timing push right underneath that tower early in the game. Now, there are some military units here out. Kaiser looks like playing a little bit more aggressively, does have his stable coming down, but For what it's worth, this is the point in in the matchup where Samwise build is really, really good. It gives you a lot of flexibility early and gives you a lot of map presence early in the game as well.
Yep, and it's just easy to just go and do. You can like adapt into it so easily if you scout this barracks, the forward. If it wasn't so forward, perhaps French would be more inclined to actually go with that semi-FF style build that I initially mentioned. He was going with just the stable, the 2 houses, and get some cavalry in for the raid and go up to the fortress age and play it that way. But here, just very easy, able to adapt into this, and that was always the strength of the Samwise build, and certainly is going to be here.
Yep, definitely is going to be. Kaiser looking like he wants to apply some pressure over here to this trading post. Does have another batch of muskets on their way, but Phillnick similarly does have a batch of musket out for himself as well. So should have the resources, should have the military units pulled together here to go and contest that. Should he want to try and save that, and I think he has every intention of trying to save that.
Of saving the trading post?
Yeah. Well, it looks like maybe not. I thought he would keep the Hussar back, and it was just gonna like kind of swing around and get everything in position to try and save that.
When you were mentioning it, it did look like all the units were nearby, and the muskets were walking towards the trading post. Certainly could have been what was happening there, but actually no. Just is actually not going to be happening. Sitting back. Just let the racks go down, and instead sends the cavalry towards his opponent's base. He knows his opponent doesn't have any kind of units in base to defend against this, and the cavalry are going to be very effective against villages that are otherwise undefended here.
Yep. Certainly are, and as a result of that, it looks like he is trying doing a little bit of raiding, but not being super successful with that. Kaiserklein has done a very good job of playing his herding game pretty good, so going to be able to keep most of his villagers pretty safe. Of course, there is a little bit of idle time going back to those, but did keep most of them pretty safe. Didn't lose any villagers, so good on him for that. And ended up taking out the trading post for basically free at this point, so really nice little advantage there for him.
Yeah, I have arrived back. Dinner is on the way, so that's delicious.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah, 8 crossbows have arrived. Have you mentioned that?
Yeah, no, it looks like they just got here, and this is going to be, I guess, kind of the make it or break it point for the French player, right? When you start sending 8 crossbows, that's the point when you want to try and get out of your base, especially if Brits send something along the lines of 5 villas as his next card or something like that. That's really going to be, your timing when you've got potentially a chance to get out of your base and do something. And it looks like Phillnick is kind of collapsing in here, trying to get into a position where he can catch these muskets, perhaps. But
are they going to get away? It does not lose any muskets on that batch of 5 there, and even gets a volley off on that single musk. Brings it down by 1, which is actually pretty good for him there. And he will actually definitely bring up his ability to contain his opponent. But this certainly won't if the cavalry get taken out. 4 cav now swiftly becoming 0. And I think that's actually exactly what's going to happen. He's maybe just gets out with 1 very low HP.
Yeah,
44, so that's really not going to help him at all with containing this French player there, whose hunts are about to sort of run out. And I'd like to point out how good his herding was actually earlier on in the game, which we never did. But at this point, actually is sort of going to extinguish all the hunts, and he really does need to push out into the center of the map for more resources. And I think, especially with that cavalry pickup, he is now going to be doing that. And the 8 expos being used in the way that you mentioned there, this is where he wants to push out. He needs to capture, claim more resources, and I think it's absolutely he has the potential to do that.
Yeah, he does. He's still like slightly behind in military unit population, which is slightly concerning because, like you have mentioned, he is running out of resources in his base, and his next hunt is actually very far very, very far away.
Yep.
Which is quite concerning for him. He's going to not only have to get out of his base, but he's going to have to get out of his base in a big way. Be able to control that very northern portion of the map. So.
Yeah, actually is perhaps more further behind than I alluded to. It still has 3 Hussars available to send. Maybe that will come into play as a set. And Minutemen do come out as well. But actually rallying in the wrong direction. They need to come towards, and perhaps some of the HP that they represent, the extra what they add to the fight is going to be less so because they're not there, they weren't on the right side. But have been called and perhaps aren't going to be as impactful as they otherwise could have been. But yeah, he really does need to find some resources. It's not even like he has some sort of outlying patch of hunt over here that he could just go and grab. I mean, there is one up here, but this is still very blue favored, and maybe blue, playing to the map because of the way it was, playing more aggressively because he can see sort of the positioning of the hunts and how favorable that is to have an aggressive agenda, and took that with British, even though it has a very good booming agenda as well.
Yeah, and this is the point where actually I think Kaiser's starting to pull into a fairly nice lead. If you look at the economic unit population, 45 to 35, but importantly, Kaiser still controls this middle portion of the map and all of the resources behind it as a result. Phillnick going to try and get a little bit of a raid in, but 2 Hussar, one of which is very low HP, not really going to be the scariest thing in the world. Can just use his villagers to kill these. Looks like one villager is going to go down. And interestingly enough, Phillnick is aging behind this, so I missed the age up.
I missed the age up. I wasn't anticipating that at all, and this feels very, very dangerous right now. Blue sees the age up, is just going to waltz on in here. Minutemen have already been killed, and I think maybe a shipment is on the way, but certainly with all of those units surrounding it, could be quite vulnerable. 8 skirms though would add a lot to this, since of course Blue does have so many musketeers, and CDB, I guess we can't count him out there. They are very, very effective at sponging, so perhaps the right decision to get up to the next stage, and so far it looks to be like it's paying off. Does lose a house, but is otherwise up with veterancy muskets, and that now makes it very difficult for Kaiser to really waltz in there and punish him.
Yeah, at the same time, though, Kaiser doesn't need to force anything, and I'm glad he didn't, because we can see the CDB starting out in this direction. That's the position that I think Kaiserklein really needs to try and control, and be aware of the fact that he needs to try and control that, because if he can control that portion of the map, still going to be very, very strong for him, just due to the fact that Phillnick doesn't have a ton of resources available.
Yeah, and that's where he's going with the villages, right? And he's got veterancy on his muskets, a few expos remaining, certainly good against musketeers, and these 2 cannons are going to add the siege potential. This is, really can start putting a clock on this area, and Blue has to react here. The cannon's adding a lot, properly noticing the musketeers coming towards him. They're much better against the infantry. That's what you want to be attacking. Nicely placed positioning, nicely placed cavalry to sort of scare the villagers away.
5 Huss and Q from the stable right here. We have to be aware of that.
There they are! Oh my, okay, wow, they're going to just snipe the 2 cavalry, the 2 falconets there. That's really not too good. Yellow being baited towards his CDB, and maybe that was deliberate from Blue. Maybe he knew his cav would be almost about to pop, and then it chose that particular moment to bait the enemy muskets away from the falconets, so those 5 cav would have the best possible chances of killing them. Does shut down the falconets, and there's an upgrade coming in as well, and with that, I think, does actually really, really push Yellow back in such a meaningful way, shuts down his ability to gain food, and really, really nicely done. Everything about that was really, really nice.
Yeah, that was excellent by Kaiser Chiefs. That was like that was the perfect play for him. He did such a great job of alluding to or baiting over on the side that the CDP were, making it look like he was going to try and cause some sort of stir over there on the resources that Phillnick was trying to gather from. And in the second I saw him doing that, I flipped over to the units in queue to see how many cav were in queue. And there was 5 in queue, and that was just a really well executed play. Allowed him to draw the defense for the Falconets out of position and pick up a kill for free, basically.
Yeah, really, really nicely done. Absolutely wonderful. And Phillnick realizes his position. Are these hunts normal on this map? And perhaps they're not. Perhaps he spawned with one. I imagine there ought to be like a hunt around here, but perhaps that was the one he herded earlier. And as a result of that, is now suffering. He has less hunt and is going to struggle because of that. Does get some skirmishers out, and that's good for him. That is the advantage of being in the Fortress Age, but I imagine more cavalry will be on the way, and with an opponent, this far ahead in terms of economic unit population, I think he should be able to stand up to a Fortress Age army, even if skirmishers are a thing that he's, that are very strong against him.
Yeah. At the same time, he doesn't have a ton of cav left alive, right? He's got some cav in queue, like you've mentioned, and he does have the 4 Hussar as well. He's got very good upgrades as well for his muskets, which is certainly going to be helpful here for him. But at the same time, this is kind of still a little bit scary. Here comes some more Hussar.
Yep, and the muskets coming in as well. Those
But the
skirmishers are a little bit
skirmishers-
vulnerable there. 3 cav are in combat with them. The other cav not so much, but yeah, does manage to pull all his units together. The cav incoming and 5 muskets from this Rax here and the rest of his army getting in. It does manage to clean this up by the looks of it. The cav going to pursue. Of course, they add the ability to snare, which slows the yellow units' retreat down, meaning the blue units can catch up. They're moving faster relative to the yellow ones and can clean this up before they escape back to the safety of the town center. More skirms joining, and that's not where they want to be. These cav going to do good work against them. The cav are running thin, and then yellow can start retreating. I imagine that's what he'll do, but not before a lot of damage is taken and does lose most of his mass.
Yeah, he's going to lose all of his mass, and importantly, the second he loses the mass and the second that Kaiser disengages from this fight, he's going to know where he needs to go to be able to shut down the French economy. He's fully aware of the fact that the French player hasn't had hunts for a very long time, and knows that all he needs to do is continue to apply pressure up here to this north side of the French base. And that's what I would look to see him do. If we take a look at the military units in queue, it does have, well, I can't see what he's got in queue just yet. When we unpause, we'll see what he's got in queue. Yeah, another 5 Hussar, and I wouldn't be too surprised to see those 5 Hussar waypointed over there. No, actually going to be coming right for the base.
Yeah, but still, I imagine he'll identify that he needs to go in that location, and either way, right on top of his opponent in his base and doing a lot of damage. These skirms, though, are going to be out. Maybe this is the right decision. Bring the cav here. It was running out of cav, and these cav do add the ability to chase the skirms, and if they'd gone towards those villages, perhaps not so. Or maybe he wasn't, but certainly with these villages nearby, he's going to identify. Maybe these villages will even start trying to kill the guys trying to build the outpost. I wouldn't, yeah. But at the same time, we'll be focusing on this fight, and maybe doesn't have the APM for that, but certainly something that could happen. Either way, the cav doing work, clearing up these skirms, and he is obviously very aware of where yellow is gathering resources. Next stop, that location, 100%, and is now going to make a beeline for those villages, because that will really, really end the game for the yellow player, and is already fairly dire straits for France at this point.
Yeah, 3 Cursor come out. Unfortunately, not going to be quite enough. He doesn't really have anything else at this point in the game. And like you mentioned, it's just all eggs in one basket up here. Once Kaiser can really start to just, lock down this position, kill some of these CDB, going to continue to be in a good spot. Looks like Phillnick did squirt some vills back out here to the south side, going to be able to gather from this coin line. But still, the longer this game goes, the more spread out the game, I feel like Brits are coming in an increasingly better position.
And just the longer a game goes, generally Brits gets in a better position with their ability to get the manas out, and once they hit, it takes a very long time to build all 20 manas. I do wonder if he's managed to have done that. We'll take a look at the population. Yes, 200 population, just so many more villages, and for that reason, the longer the game goes, it's going to be more in favor of him.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the economic of the population, right? 70 for the British player versus 30 here for the French player.
The question is, do you build a wall around these villages?
Lock them in.
Yeah.
your punishment for eating this deer is
that lead the pioneers gonna be executed right there, and that does end the series. Kaiserklein taking a 4-2 victory in this best of 7. Some very, very long, very intense games. A really, really good Smackdown. Thoroughly enjoyed that one, and I look forward to doing more in the future. But I am gonna head out right away. I'm not sure if Zuta has any replays, but I will mention it for the benefit of the VOD. There are some replay analytics of ZutaZuta available on the ESOC YouTube channel and on ZutaZuta's YouTube channel as well. All of those links in the description, as well as the Mito game that I mentioned earlier. The really excellent one that Zuta and I were excited about. Do check that out. But that's it from me. Maybe Zuta has more for this stream if you're watching. But it's been a long one, so I'm not hopeful.
Yeah, like you mentioned, before we started this game, like 25, 30, 35 minute games, just it grinds you out after a while. And so no replay tonight, but a really good series, just a great series between these two players. I really enjoyed this one, and it was a lot of fun to watch. A lot of fun games, a lot of very close games, a lot of fun matchups. Thinking back to the Ottoman gameplay on Arizona, still impresses me. The Avis gun control and the kind of interesting builds that we saw there.
Yep.
the previous game, the 35-minute game on Hudson Bay with, a very close Brit versus Dutch game. Don't see a lot of that. So just some really good high-level gameplay.
The opening matchup, Germany versus Russia, that was interesting.
Yeah, that was a very good one.
Yeah, I really enjoyed
Lots
that
of
one.
Great games.
So thank you very much for watching this. If you were watching this as a VOD, do leave a like on the video. Me and Zuta do like to check all the feedback that's on there. And if you're watching this in Twitch, slam a PogChamp into the chat.
Yeah. Or a Papa Rex Baby Rage.
That's a great one as well. But that's it from me. Thank you for watching. We'll see you all again next time.